roll call sheet should be going around. Since we're going off of last time's agenda, we don't need to approve the agenda as we're just continuing where we left off, hopefully minus the bloodbath. So if you recall, there were 4 more standing committees to appoint, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more standing committees to appoint counselors to, and we were 3/4 of the way through finance, and there were already a bunch of people who had thrown their names into the hat for finance committee appointments. So if everyone's okay with it, we can proceed with those nominees. Does anybody, okay, sorry, first we have Caleb, Alex, Jad, Zoe, Margot, Rory, and Chris. Does anybody else want to add their name to the finance committee? Okay, so just for the purposes of remembering where we were, I'll let you all give a 10-second motivation for yourselves, but I don't think we had gotten to that point. Caleb actually, sorry.
They're not all here. So.
Yeah, I know. Caleb sent me a motivation.
I think it would be unfair for the people who were here to motivate again, and the people that weren't here or aren't here not.
Does anyone object to just continuing with, like, without letting people motivate? Because it's kind of not fair that they were here last time and they talked and then some don't get to re-talk. So is everyone okay with just voting? Mm-hmm. Do you all know who Caleb, Alex, Jad, Zoe, Margot, Rory, and Chris are? Yeah. Okay. Oh, we do have a board now, so it makes writing names easier.
We can write, I could write the names.
Yeah, sure, just so, because there's a lot of them for this one. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'd rather we know who we're voting for than not know. So we'll take the extra 2 seconds. Caleb?
For how many positions?
4, sorry. Alex. Jad, J-A-D. Zoe. Margot. Rory, and Chris. Alright, so those are the people who had nominated themselves last week.
There's 4 spots.
Yes, there are 4 spots. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So, if we can all...
I'm really tired.
Here, I'll pass out the papers.
Are we doing secret? Oh, wait.
Yeah,
No.
because, yeah, because there's more people than there are spots on the committee.
These are really good. I haven't been through
Okay, so as a reminder, same as last time, you can pick 4 out of the 6 names. You can abstain, you can pick 1 and abstain for 3, you can pick 2 and abstain for 2, but you cannot vote for more than 4 people or else the last one, gets rejected.
So, quick question.
Yes.
Are we still doing the ranking system
No.
that was talked about last time, or just put names down on the...
Just put the 4 you know.
Thank you.
Secret ballot. Oh.
Yes. Yeah, so it's just 4 names. There's no ranking, anything like that.
Yes.
Here you are. Here you are. There you are. Thank you. You're welcome. Did I miss anyone? Ah, yes. There you are. And then Sophie and I will count them over there. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that's exactly okay.
Thank you.
Can I have this pen for a second?
You want this one?
Oh, yeah, please, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, thanks. Yes.
Can I
Oh,
write
thank you.
what's now?
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, thanks. Okay, has everyone?
I haven't.
Nope, you have not. I also have 10 fingers. We'll suffer through. Here, I'll bring them
you need my pen?
out here. We'll be back in just a
I'm
second.
just trying to pull out a better one.
It's all good.
I got my ballots.
Oh.
what? No. I love how Brussels sprouts.
They're so easy to grow at home.
It's not, it's bougie, but like, what? It's the easiest thing to grow. It's like the cheapest thing to grow.
You say it's bougie?
Microgreens?
It's bougie?
I said it's a bougie food.
What, sprouts?
Yeah, don't you think alfalfa sprouts are bougie? Come on.
No.
Like,
You can easily grow them like right in your house.
seeds in a
jar?
jar.
Yep.
That takes time.
And they,
though.
really?
It takes time.
If it's warm
it takes
enough.
time and effort to like
People
grow
don't
things.
grow their food.
Yeah. Like
No, they're
should,
super,
but it's not.
sprouts are really easy to like, they grow really fast, yeah.
Okay, I get it. Sprouts
So-
are not a bougie food. I
the-
misspoke.
But they are like, in the sense that in restaurants that are expensive.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
charge
They give you, like,
$3 extra to
one.
put alfalfa
Yeah.
sprouts on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
And if you buy them in the store, they're really expensive for the amount of like effort it takes.
So you might as well just buy the seeds and grow them in your house. And if it's warm enough, it literally grows like even before the week is over. Like a
But they
lot.
get moldy easily, so.
Yeah, that too.
You gotta nip them.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, everyone's got.
Mold situation.
How are you, Laura? Everyone's got something on their fingers. Oh, you're
Yeah.
So for the lazy green thumbs, I've started this thing at home where you get the AeroGrow system, and it's all automated for you. And I'm now at 180 days of basil and mint, and you don't have to do anything to it. It's every 2 weeks you put in the little things of water, and you fill it up when it beeps and says fill me up. And it's like I've had basil all winter, and it's amazing. It takes no effort.
You've made
That's
herb growth bougie.
Yeah, that was like Paige. That's
Bougie.
Yeah.
But it's so easy. You put the seed pods in, you put the water, you press go on the screen, it grows your vegetables for you.
I grew celery once.
I just have really sad basil like on my windowsill.
Yeah.
Even basil's dying now though.
That's what happened to
I
my
think I
celery.
trimmed the roots a little bit too much.
There's no species. I'm trying to find the one where
Yeah,
I
but
grow
I,
white
there, it's hydroponic, so I went in and I was cleaning out the tub in the bottom, and I snipped like all the nasty root growth that was molded, and they're
So you take it, yeah, it's,
I don't know if
that's
it's gonna survive.
Let me just,
no, this one has 88 views.
When are we getting that brand new?
Okay, so the appointees, there are three. Who was it again? Sorry. No.
Oh, wow.
Rory, Margot, Zoe. And then there's Caleb and Chris. Caleb and Chris were tied. We're tied. So it's either a runoff or council adds another. So are your options. Oops, sorry. Oh, thank you. Yes, Rory?
Shall we do a runoff vote?
All right. There's been a motion to do a runoff vote. Margot second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of doing a runoff vote for Chris and Caleb, please raise your hands, placards. 3, 4, 5, 6. All those opposed? 1. And any abstentions? 1. Okay. So we'll have a runoff between Caleb and Chris. Rats, now I have to make more papers. Okay.
Do we need two for two people?
I mean, because the whole point of doing the secret ballot is that people wouldn't know who was voted for. The motivation behind doing the secret ballot is so that like people wouldn't know, oh, this person got 5 and this person got 7, and they wouldn't know who voted for who. So, if council's okay with it, we'll just do that. If there's any opposition, let me know. If not, write some names on some papers. I think I did that very well. Here you are. Okay, so this time just write down one name, or you can abstain. Can you just pass one over, please? Actually, just pass them over.
Thank you.
challenging part.
Okay.
Ready with my laptop.
Oh, I don't want to.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah.
Do you folks in the corner have paper? Okay.
Who's it? It's Chris and Caleb?
Yeah, it's Chris and Caleb.
Let me make more room for you. Trying not to crowd out the camera so they. So now this is blocking everyone's faces.
Anyone, have you folks voted? Perfect, perfect, thank you, thank you. voted.
Oh, where are we at?
We are voting on
Thank you. Thank you.
I have many pens. Do you want it?
I can.
Has anyone not? Yes, I see you. Yeah. Thank you. Has everyone voted? Not. Oops, sorry.
Just. Just everybody. YOLO. That is like a really big challenge. I am impressed to be able to pass it. Thank you.
Oh wow! I'm proud of people. We finally got, you know, two
Sorry.
women on one.
Okay, so appointees
Baby steps.
to the Finance Committee are Zoe, Margot, Rory, and Chris. Congratulations. You may now speak to John, who could not, am I right?
Yeah.
Could not be here today.
Do we also still have to do excuses for these?
No, because it's a special
For
for the execs. I contemplated that. We'll do it at the end, because it's not technically a meeting, but at the same time it is.
Kemi and John, I believe, sent you.
Yeah, they did, so I was ruminating on that. Yeah. Zoe, Margot, Rory, Chris. Perfect. Alright. So with that, we can move on to Student Life Committee. Just a reminder before we appoint to committees, Standing Reg, I think 166 states that every counselor should be on a committee. So if you're on a whole bunch of committees, just remember that we need to leave room for counselors who are not on committees, and that it's actually impossible, you will realize, to sit on 4 to 5 committees.
And you have to do the workload.
Yes, that too. All of the committees do require work. I should have made this clear at the beginning. Committees are really where the specialties happen. So although we come to council and we debate motions and all those things, committees are like where the actual work takes place. So if you notice, we don't spend 4 hours at council debating every single little policy change that comes to us, because council's not the place for that. That's for policy committee, and the same thing with student life. You don't see us debating what's going to happen in orientation or anything like that. So when you're picking a committee, that's where you're going to do the actual substantive work, and then those things will come to council and pass through the consent agenda, because council knows that the committees have already looked at it and given it actually some attention, more than 30 people in a room can give in one single evening. Yes, Paige?
How many more committees are there?
Student life, external and campaign, sustainability, and Loyola. And then there's some other appointments that we'll get to after, but in terms of standing committees, those are the 4.
Academic caucus also. No.
That's June.
Oh,
It
that's
was
June?
changed, yes, and it was
Oh,
changed
okay,
to
okay,
June
okay.
in the standing
Okay.
regs, because we never managed to appoint at this meeting. Okay, so student life committee, that is Michelle.
So Student Life Committee. Student Life Committee has historically mostly just been a committee for funding. So there's the special projects funding, which is around $40,000 per year, and there are different deadlines, and the committee approves different projects from the student population. Within the actual committee's description, it also talks about helping facilitate planning, preparation, and executing phases of events organized by the CSU. We're always happy to have that happen, but in the past, counselors haven't been as interested in that. But so either event planning, but the core has always been committee funding, the special counsel stuff. It's a lower commitment committee, but attendance is really important because of those deadlines for special project funding. And there's a little bit of work because you have to go through all the proposals before we do the committee. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so just a reminder, if the committees, there are 4 seats per committee, but if they don't get filled, they'll come back next time, and if there's counselors who are away or anything like that, they will or may end up filling the committee. So don't feel obliged to put your name forward just because there's a seat open or anything like that. Okay, so Student Life Committee, opening the floor to nominations. Yes, Sophie?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Margot? Samantha?
I would like to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Rowan? Yes, Paige? Okay, do we have a second? Margot? Okay, and Peter Zhuang sent me an email requesting that they also be nominated to the committee. So if anyone would just like to raise their placard for Peter, Rory, thank you very much. They do consent. All right, so at this point there's 4 counselors for 4 spots. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves? Okay, so if not, we can move to motivations. If you'd like to motivate, you don't have to, as always. But if you would like to, Sophie.
But there's no vote?
No, it's just if you want to say why you want to be
Okay.
on the committee.
Well, I'm
Just
down to
everyone gets their chance.
I'm down to organize event. I think the CSU event could be improved. So I'm down to participate in that, and I've been coordinating Mother Hubbard's this past semester, and right now the Concordia Farmers Market, so I think I'm qualified.
Thank you. Samantha?
I would like to nominate myself because while I campaigned, I had a platform with ideas brimming on driving the CSU in productive directions. I want to be a part of this committee because I have ideas that I believe could be innovative and promote student leadership on campus. At the same time, we give visibility to students that really matter in this upcoming year and have them feel like Concordia is a welcoming, representative, multi-background university that it's intended to be.
Thank you. Paige?
I am a student and I love life. So
Thank you. Right, and Peter sent me an email stating I was on the committee last year and I feel I will be able to take the responsibility to do it and think it would be a valuable experience. So at this point we can omnibus or yes,
I'll
Ron?
move to omnibus all for
Thank you. Seconded by Margot. Is there any discussion? Nope. All those in favor of voting on the 4 nominees, raise your placards. 11. All those opposed? 1.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's a late
0. And any abstentions? Perfect. All right. So congratulations to Sophie, Samantha, Paige, and Peter, who I will send an email to. You were on the Student Life Committee. And next we have external and campaigns, and this one
That's
is.
for Kimmy, but I'm gonna say it for
Yep.
her. Basically, to give you like the little description, it's assisting with planning the campaigns, and you do a lot of you approve a lot of funding from external organizations outside of Concordia, but it's also related to fee levies, not fee levies, but like other. For example, Sustainable Concordia dealt with divest kind of stuff for campaigns, so helping fund them to deal with divest as an example. Basically, she said that the meetings will be about once a month, but there needs to be availabilities in June, within like the first week of June. I was on this committee a few years ago as a counselor, and it's really fun. There's a lot of really awesome events that you're going to be funding and like what? So First Voices Week is something that's partially funded through external, a lot of BBS, SPHR stuff, like a whole bunch of things.
Thank you. Yes, Barra? Okay. I guess the floor is open to nominations, seconded by Rowan. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves, Margot?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Rowan?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Sophie? Great. So, yes, Alex?
James Hanna has asked to be nominated, as has Jared Haas.
Okay, do we have a second for both of them? Chris? Jared? Right, so if there's no further nominees, we have 5 nominees for 4 seats, and they are Barra, Margot, Rowan, James, and Jared. The floor is open to motivation. Barra?
I've worked as a campaigns assistant for the past semester. I stopped. I was no longer in that position because I was elected for council. And I have a lot of experience with regards to campaigns. I have a lot of connections and all that. I know I've been worked for mobilizing a lot of events, so I know exactly what is needed and I know exactly how to help out.
Thank you. Margot?
So I've been pretty involved in like various mobilization campaigns around like different fee levy groups, like and like working with different fee levy groups. I'm also
like pro BDS. I am the executive on a pro BDS Jewish group, Jewish club. I am looking to get even more involved and have a good time campaigning. So.
My first involvement was with the Divest campaign, which is the CSU annual campaign, not last year but the year before. I wrote and submitted the proposal for the last year's campaign as a counselor, which was the unpaid internships. I've done work with the campaigns department before, and I think sitting on the committee would help me do more.
Great, thank you. Did either James or Jared send you anything?
James had asked me to mention extensive involvement working with student clubs such as the Liberal Club, and therefore extensive involvement in the political sphere and involvement in that respect. Jared did not send me anything in particular, however did mention interest in the committee.
Thank you. Margaret?
I was wondering if I could motivate for Jared.
Yeah, absolutely. So floor's open if anyone wants to motivate. Yes.
So he's been in contact with me for like involvement in various actions or like anti-tuition hikes. He seems like an all-around good dude, and he's the only dude in this room who, the only person in this room who removed their nomination for a committee in favor of gender parity. They seem like they are going to be good on external.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Yes, Sophie?
I'd like to motivate for Rowan and Margot. I've been working with them on different campaigns. I think they're really good and highly motivated, and they're always behind like writing the things that needs to be written, so I think they'll do a good job.
Thank you. Samantha?
I'd like to motivate to nominate James. I believe that he has extensive knowledge on these issues to continue the work at the CSU, and at the same time, his level of commitment will show that he'll be an invaluable part of the team.
Thank you. There's, yes, Alex?
I guess I'll also motivate for James, seeing as James does have a significant amount of experience in campaigns and the political sphere of both Quebec and Canada. I feel that James does have the qualifications as well to be a relevant candidate.
Thank you. There's nothing further. Do you need me to write them on the board, or are we? Okay. Yes, yeah, Sophie, go ahead.
So just one last thing, just to remember that there are some counselors who have nominated themselves for this committee that haven't been appointed to any committee yet, and there are several, other counselors are on a lot of committees, and I think we should be prioritizing counselors that might not be on the committee already. But also, just a reminder, your two favorite words I always say are going to come out of my mouth: gender parity.
And James. Right, so I'll pass around these nice little pieces of paper, and once again, as always, it's for votes or abstain. 4. Yeah.
Still writing.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
I'm still lost. Thanks.
Thank you. I think everything's good. Do you have paper? Oh.
Yeah.
Chance to go through?
No.
So, big.
Pile of checks. Some of those I may have gone through, I'm not sure.
Money, money, money.
Big pile of ones, I think.
I think some of them are from today and some of them are old.
Love it.
So who wants to decide?
Yeah. I can do it. Super. Yeah.
So I actually did not know and cannot believe that Colin Shepherd makes $450,000. And I learned something new today about it.
Highest paid university administrator in Quebec.
yelling that so much the entire day.
Why?
Alan Shepherd makes
Oh my God.
$450,000
I don't know why.
And he gets a free house.
Yes.
Oh
He
yeah,
gets a free mansion in Westmount.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Alan Shepherd.
How is that even?
You
And
didn't
he
know
gets
that.
money to throw parties.
That's
It's gonna happen
it's
in
very common.
Alright, so the appointees to the External and Campaigns Committee are Barra, Margot, Jared, and James. Congratulations.
For everyone who signed up.
No, there was one,
Oh.
yes, Margot?
How many committees is James on?
2, I believe.
2. Is it
Let me
3?
check the,
Feels like 12.
It feels like 12.
I mean, people nominated themselves to committees that they didn't necessarily
3.
get on.
3.
So now
is
it's
this
3.
4?
1.
Which ones?
Clubs, policy, external, clubs, policy,
I don't have them on clubs.
Wait, no, it's not
James is not on
James
clubs,
isn't
no.
on clubs.
It's two committees.
Okay.
With that one.
Okay.
No, it just
Okay. So we are, yes, Rory?
Yeah, it would be, I think Margot's point is valid that like if people are on multiple clubs then they should, or multiple committees, not clubs, they should try and stop because there are like a ton of other counselors and there's also council seats that aren't filled yet. So like leave some room, and again, like I was one of those people that took on a lot of committees my first year and realized that like it's a lot of time and a lot of work and then had to cut back. So it's better to commit to what you really want now than to cut back later.
Point of order.
Yes.
I'd like to ask for a count of everybody who's on committees, like. Yeah.
It'll take a couple of
And if we could do it in from most committees to least, in that order.
From most committees to least? Okay,
Yeah.
Could you give us a second to?
Yeah, no worries.
Can I just add that if people don't know, you have to meet quorum, otherwise you can't make any decisions on the committee. So if some people can't make meetings regularly, then the committee can't meet and then things can't be passed. So this isn't a suggestion of when you're going to be going to meetings. For example, like I said, policy, it's almost every week, so you have to show up every week. And we're going to decide together about how many absences are acceptable, and if not, you have to resign. So it is a big workload.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say it's a lot of bread. I think it goes on the top. Yeah. And yeah. I hate there so much. Okay, that's why. So you do like so passion. Carrot related trauma. You know, spot.
Sophie.
I feel really hard. Okay. I don't know people, I know the words. It's like when we're
I just like read something like online. I was just like, what?
It's longer than I think. I don't even know.
So me. We will be buddies this year.
Except for most of these.
could really get me.
Yeah. My life.
Side.
Review and events.
I'm pleasant to work with, don't worry.
No worries.
Yeah, where's the delineation? You can just add one.
Okay, so just to read from most to least, Margot is on 3 committees. On 2 committees are Chris, Zoe, James, Samantha, Alex, and Patrick. And then on 1 committee are Hilal, Rory, Jared, Bara, and Paige.
Who's on no committees right now?
Who's on no committees right now?
Everyone
Let me
else.
just go through the list
Somebody
of
leave
all
or just-
counselors.
Because every counselor should be on one.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go through my.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I agree with Rory, just because we also need to keep in mind that like we are representing students who like might not come from the same background as us or fall into different like categories. So let's keep in mind that like we want to do our best to like represent everyone. Being that like the distribution of council does not completely represent like the accuracy of what the Concordia community looks like, so let's keep in mind all of that stuff when we're moving forward and like passing things and trying to get on council.
Yeah, I don't know. Events.
Okay, and on no committees are, and just to clarify, this isn't to shame anyone, it's just, these are the counselors on no committees. Sometimes they're away, they didn't know to ask me, they forgot, anything like that, so it can be really anything. Caleb, Jad, Marlene, Rowan, Sammy, Daniel, Abdullah, and Sally. So those are the counselors on 0 committees. And like I said, it's not a bad thing if some of the committees don't get filled, they just reappear every council meeting. Last year we had a committee that reappeared every single meeting until the end of the year, because it just never got filled. So it's not something that doesn't happen, it's really not a big deal. Yes, Semi?
What committee was it last year that kept reappearing?
Maybe? Jad?
Wow, that's cruel.
Oh, sorry, yes, David?
Well, I just want to know which committees are left.
Sustainability and Loyola, but there's also other, they're not standing committees, but if students want to get involved in stuff that's not necessarily a standing committee of council, there's also a CCSL, the Library Services Fund Committee, the CSU Community Action Fund. There's 3 signing officers that we have to appoint, and then in June we'll deal with academic caucus appointments. So yes, counselors should sit on a committee if possible, but if you really want to do something else and you don't have time, there are other options as well. Yes, Semi?
You did not list BIPOC.
BIPOC actually doesn't get voted in by council, and the reason that was put forth when BIPOC was created was that a council of mostly white folks shouldn't be the ones who are approving or appointing to the committee. So if you'd like to sit on BIPOC, you can speak to the BIPOC exec rep, who is Akira.
I'm Cherry.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so you know where we're at.
All right, thank you. So at this point, we are on sustainability. So if anyone, oh, sorry, Akira, do you want to say something?
Yeah. So
yours.
this committee is responsible for fostering, like, supporting a culture of sustainability on campus, giving recommendations to council about sustainability policies, and any sustainability events going on campus. There's a big plan for this year, and also Concordia is just in the middle of restating its 5-year sustainable plan, so this is actually a pretty busy year for sustainability committee, so please don't put yourself on this committee if you think that you're not going to be doing anything. But yeah.
Great, thank you. So if anyone would like to nominate themselves to the sustainability committee, yes, Sophie? To nominate yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second? Samantha? Anyone else? Yes, Paige? nominate yourself?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Do we have a second? Rory? Is there, yes, Jad? For yourself? Okay. Second? Farah? Okay, if there's no one else, I'll give you all a couple seconds to motivate for yourselves. Sophie, why would you like to sit on sustainability?
I'm doing a minor in sustainability. As I said, I've been working with the Concordia Food Coalition for the past year. I help with the field levy. I'm the mother hover chef. Right now in charge of the farmers market. And I will keep being involved. Just got out of a Living Lab conference, so that's my committee, you know.
Thank you. Paige?
I would really like to work on making sustainability more accessible for like everyone on campus. I feel like oftentimes sustainability is framed as like always a personal failing or like and not an addressing of like huge institutions that like pour like trash into like oceans, whatever, you know? So yeah, I just want to figure out how to make it more accessible to minorities and people with disabilities and everyone that's not a middle class white man.
Thank you. John?
I want to be on sustainability committee because it's a very important cause in today's world. And personally, I'm not someone that necessarily is very sustainable, so maybe going into that committee would not only allow me to sort of change my lifestyle into becoming more sustainable, but at the same time providing that third, like kind of like out of the box perspective on certain things that maybe we can come up with some creative ideas that people that are usually involved when it comes to sustainability don't necessarily look at. And yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so at this point we have 3 nominees for 4 seats, so it's council's decision if they want to. Yes, Rowan?
I move to omnibus.
Okay, do we have a second? Margot? Right, if there's no discussion, all those in favor of appointing Sophie, Paige, and Jad to the Sustainability Committee, please raise your placards. 9, 10, all those opposed, 0, and any abstentions? 0. Perfect. So Sophie, Paige, and Jad, you are now on the Sustainability Committee, and it will come back in June. And we are at the Loyola Committee, and Lexi, this one's yours.
Alright, so the Loyola Committee is responsible for advising the CSU on how best to serve students at Loyola, and it will also make reports, recommendations to council regarding all CSU events, activities, and projects at Loyola. In addition, the committee is responsible for ensuring more food options and Loyola events. So some of the things we'll be working on this year are getting a lot of events at Loyola, a lot more fun things, getting better services there, like mentioned food services, but also peer counseling and better sexual violence services there. And then some ongoing projects that have been left over for the last couple of years, like G-Lounge, some renovation stuff. Yeah. Everyone obviously is welcome to nominate themselves, but people who study and or live at Loyola would really appreciate it. So.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to nominate themselves? Yes, Alex?
Jared has asked me to nominate himself for this committee.
Jared?
Jared,
sorry. Alright, do we have any other nominees for the Loyola Committee?
Was it seconded?
Oh, sorry, was it seconded? Sorry, wrong. Mistake. Great. If there's no one else who would like to nominate themselves, yes, Michaela?
I just really encourage people to be kind of open to the Loyola Committee. I know that maybe you don't have to be on the campus, you don't have to be living near Loyola, but we are wanting to do a lot more outreach. So this is really going to be an exciting committee. I know in the past there hasn't been much movement, but we really are aiming to do a lot more. So just think about it. What's the commitment?
I think it would probably be once a month.
Once a month, not so bad.
Is it to nominate yourself?
Yeah, I'll nominate myself.
Okay. Do we have a second? Margot? Yes, Rory?
Can I nominate Peter?
Peter sent me the list of committees they wanted to be on, and that was not one of them, so I'm going to presume that they do not consent to that.
Do you want me to check really quick?
The email I got was CCSL Student Life and Clubs in Space, and that's already 3.
Can I speak to Peter?
Yeah.
The reason why I want to nominate Peter is that, especially last year, Peter's very enthusiastic about getting involved in as much as he can. And when he is involved in a committee, you know, he shows up. Even to committees he's not involved in, he shows up and asks the questions and tries to be involved and tries to put the work in. So at the very least, for meeting quorum and for having, you know, enough people in the room to make decisions. I know that if he's requested to be on 3 different things, we know that he hasn't gotten one of those or maybe 2 of those.
No, both so far.
Oh, he's gotten both of those so far?
Dang.
Okay, I rescind.
Okay. Sophie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe we should just, you know,
Yeah,
check that out next meeting because there's only 2 people in the committee right now.
So far there's just one, which is, and Paige, was it? Oh, sorry.
Who seconded
Right?
Paige?
Yeah, Mark. Alright, so there's 2 nominees. If there's still vacant spaces, like I said, we have a bunch of counselors who aren't here. So if anyone else would like to, yes, Alex?
I'd like to motion for omnibus.
Okay, do we have a second? Paige, are you all broken up that you don't get to speak about yourselves for the next 2 minutes? Okay. All those in favor of omnibus appointing Jared and Paige, please raise your placards. 9, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 1. Perfect. So that carries. Jared and Paige, you are now on the Loyola Committee, and the 2 vacant seats will come back next council. So at this point, we have filled our standing committees, and we are on the point of signing officers. So if anyone would like to take the floor to explain signing officers, or I'll leave it to the GC if you're open to it.
The signing officers are responsible for signing checks and financial statements, as well as looking into the veracity of the financial statements they get. The signing officers had a very busy year this past year. It's super important that the signing officers are available quite frequently to come by and sign checks that are created for the union. For those go for check requisitions, it's the process. You need to be available to be at this office, like I would say once a week minimum, because being a signing officer is a big time chunk. There will be times where you're going to have to sign my checks because I can't sign my own checks. So the people who are appointed must be available, like a lot for this. It's a big role, it's a big thing, and to have some understanding of the CSU finances is also super helpful. That's all.
Thank you. Corey?
I want to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Rowan? Rowan?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Margot? Yes, James?
I would like to nominate Caleb.
Do you have their consent?
Pretty sure I do.
Are you sure?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Well,
knowing Caleb,
if I can speak for that,
obviously,
because I
yes.
did see him today, he did
Yeah.
say he wanted to do signing officer.
Okay, because it is a big time commitment, and if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
confirm to me that Caleb
He did show willingness.
Okay. Because the worst thing we can do is nominate somebody who does not consent to the nomination, and then that is not a good thing. All right. Yes, Paige.
There's one signing officer. 2.
2 from council.
Yes, Alex.
I'll nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Samantha. All right. Any other nominations? Yes, Paige. Okay, do we have a second? Rory. Yes, Jad. Okay, do we have a second?
Yeah.
Alex. Okay. James.
Point of information.
Oh, yeah.
I read in the signing regulations there are 3 signing officers.
Yes, I am the 3rd one.
Okay, so that's an automatic appointment.
Yeah, we do still need to clear, like, council will approve it
in June, but
yeah.
Well, there's 1 executive signing officer.
Yeah.
And then 2 counselors.
So yes, council will, like, a motion will be made to
Yeah.
appoint Sophie as a
In June.
formality.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to? Yes, Jan.
No, I have a quick question.
Yes.
I'm assuming that for the signing officers, you would need 2 signatures, or just 1 is enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense.
All right.
2 out of 3. It's a 2
Yeah,
out of
2
3
out of
game.
3, yeah.
Okay. So at this point we have Rory, Rowan, Caleb, Alex. Not sure why I have Rory twice, and Jad. Did I miss somebody, or I just wrote Rory twice? Paige. That was it. Okay. Sorry, I must have done copy paste.
I seconded
sorry.
it, so maybe
yeah,
it's like
I think that's it.
I'm missing who seconded, like, Alex Krasik, Paige, and
Rowan seconded me, Margot seconded Rowan, I seconded Paige, Alex seconded James, who seconded Jed?
I seconded Jed.
Yes, Chris?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Samantha.
Okay, do you consent?
Yes.
All right. Samantha. Okay, if there's nothing further, Michaela has so graciously written all the names on the board, so I'll give you all a couple seconds to motivate for yourselves, starting with Rory.
Okay, so I was signing officer this past year. It's a very important role. It's something that I took quite seriously. Because there's a general coordinator who's in the office all the time, usually one of the other two signing officers has to be on campus. I was the one that was not on campus all the time. I was lucky that I had someone who was, so I think that is important. But of course, checks are processed on Wednesdays, and then they try to mail them out by the Monday the following week. So if you're available, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at some point to come in, then that's great. I usually made an effort to just drop by to sign the checks, even if I wasn't actually holding office hours. I didn't do this necessarily as an illustration. I did this because we're having a long meeting, but this is like the typical amount of checks that you get in a folder, and you have to sit and go through every single one of them. And there's all the backup documentation to them, and there have been a number of checks this past year that I have refused to sign, and that, by verifying, I've gone through and been like, oh, there's some suspicious stuff going on, or I'm not comfortable signing this, or I don't have enough information. And there's a number of things that, like, when I come back to the accountant and say, okay, why are we paying this or why are we paying that? They go back and there's been an error, or there's been an amount that, was wrong, etc. So I have a finance background. I'm a finance major. I've been a signing authority for a corporation before, and this is something I take very seriously. So I'd appreciate everyone's confidence in continuing the role. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy?
Yeah, I was the other council signing authority last year. I was the one who was always on campus because I am always on campus and will continue to be next year. I also, to speak to my trustworthiness in the role, for lack of a better word, it was through my position as signing authority that I started to notice a lot of checks with that were from Vancouver. And through digging through those was where I found out about several executives receiving flights to BC and not telling council, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I've proven the fact that I take this role seriously and that I will investigate what I deem to be necessary to investigate.
Thank you. Did Caleb send anything?
No.
Okay. Alex?
As someone who was actually, even before I started campaigning, I was hearing about what happened with Omar. I was actually digging into it and looking into it on my own accord. I take conflict of interest and abuse and embezzlement of power, abuse of power and embezzlement, very seriously. I'm completely against that, and frankly, I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to look out for at a university. As such, I can promise you that will be the single biggest thing that I will be looking out for, and I will put 110% of my possible effort into looking into that.
James, did I forget you?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
I like to.
Not on the board.
I'm not on the board. I'm not nominating myself.
Oh, you nominated Caleb. Oh, yes.
Caleb.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I nominated Caleb.
Yes.
Right. So, allow me to speak a bit on Caleb's behalf. Is that Caleb, probably out of anybody in this room, he's one of the most qualified people for the position of signing officer.
Point of order, just we still have other individuals who are running that have to nominate for themselves first.
By the chair,
Yeah, because the chair signaled you out thinking that, the chair signaled out my colleague James Hanna, the counselor, because the chair, I believe, thought that James Hanna was one of the people nominated.
Yeah, sorry, that was my mistake.
We're not opening up, I didn't think we were, yeah.
We'll get to it, don't worry.
Right.
It'll pass, don't worry. Alex?
We just did it.
Sorry. Jad?
So the reason why I want to be a signing officer is, first, I am one for a nonprofit that I work with, so I have a sense of how the procedure works when it comes to signing out checks, making sure the check is valid, the numbers behind the check are correct. And second, I think that reason is more of a personal thing, is because a lot of, if anything, as a counselor, I represent a lot of people that necessarily weren't happy with CSU last year. Or necessarily that they didn't want to see the CSU that it is this year. So if I do end up being a signing officer, that would be a nice way to show these people that, hey, listen, we're all working together here. And you might have people from opposite sides that are working towards the same thing, and at the end of the day, it shows accountability, it shows that you're being people that are outside of the CSU culture to come and sign off CSU checks, and it shows a more inclusive side to CSU.
Thank you. Paige?
I will be on campus every single day of my life until the end of time. So I think availability-wise, it's not an issue. And yeah, I also would like to do my part to avoid like scummy money activity. Like, yeah.
Thank you. Samantha?
As a signing officer, I believe I would be competent because I like to be detailed and well informed when making a decision. And in that case, I believe that this is a fit for the job because it requires someone who will pay attention to detail, who will be aware of consequences, and who will be aware of what it means for the future of the CSU. Furthermore, I will adopt a neutral stance when signing checks and abide by the CSU's values and the objectives we want to put forward in the upcoming academic year. I'm also on campus 4 to 5 days a week. In the case that I am on campus 4 days a week, I usually come in for a study break. So I'm constantly available.
Great, thank you. Okay, so at this point, if anyone wants to motivate for their colleagues, Rory, Patrick, James?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not motivating for a colleague. I actually just wanted to motivate for myself one more time. I forgot something. And this is a bit of a sticky detail. Another reason that it's not necessarily about me per se, but it's about the current situation. There are a few checks that I have still not signed, and I'm putting my foot down on not signing until I have documentation to back it up. And my only fear is that in the event that other people are elected into this position, then those people may unknowingly go and sign these checks that I have sort of stopped in this new mandate. And I guess that's the vulnerability of like overlapping mandates. This isn't done, and the new team comes in. So I would just ask that everyone give me maybe a little bit of patience in electing me again to do this, so that I can sort of keep. I don't want to like mention too many details about it, but to keep resisting the signing of a check until I have the appropriate documentation for it, in order to prevent suspected fraud. Thanks.
Thank you. Patrick?
I want to motivate for Sam. I think she is a very motivated individual. Like, I think she was like the only person in like out of this room who was really like, who was tabling, like she was really motivated to get elected. I think she's a very ethical person, and that's a quality that you need if you're a signing officer. Plus, for gender parity's sake, I think that it would be nice to have her as one of the signing officers.
And not to single you out, sorry, just remember our gender neutral pronouns.
Sorry.
Don't worry, it's been happening all meeting, just a reminder. James.
Alright, so I would like to motivate on behalf of my colleague Caleb, because I believe that he has a very, very interesting nickname called the Deficit Slayer, and it's not unearned. As basically what he was in the beginning, the VP Finance for the VCSA, and he helped the VCSA out of a very tough financial situation. Left after in the wake of our late president, his departure from Bendy, and that was the beginning of his kind of financial career, and he did a very good job. So I believe that it would be very good to for everybody to vote for Caleb.
Thank you. Just a reminder on gender neutral pronouns. Yes, Sam?
I would like, is it possible to motivate for 3D?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to motivate for Rory, Rowan, and Alex. For the first two, I believe that it is very important to have someone that is well experienced in the CSU, that understands how our future commitments will have affected us in the past and where they will lead us in the future. They are well informed about matters, they are well informed about directions, and as we have seen, they have extensive experience with it. For Alex, I would like to motivate them because it's true, they do abide by a value of neutrality and not respecting some interest over another. And I believe this could be a key value in developing a signing officer that is scrupulent and at the same time committed to ensuring we make sufficient commitments that will benefit us.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, yes, Rory?
I just, I don't mean to sound too cynical here, but this just reminds me of last year when we had a similar conversation with signing officers, and I want to applaud everyone for their intentions, wanting to make sure that the CSU follows their values in signing checks and slaying deficits are great intentions. But I just want to remind everyone that this is actually an extremely boring, monotonous job that has absolutely nothing to do with what the CSU is spending their money on. The checks that I sign right now for clubs, they're approved by Clubs and Space Committee. If you want to act on what the CSU is spending their money on, be on Clubs and Space Committee. If you want to, direct the CSU's values in the CSU spending, be on Finance Committee, or be on campaigns, or be on student life. The things that are incurring the expenses and approving the expenses. Signing authority has nothing to do with any of that. It's literally, the check has been processed correctly, the amounts are correct, the receipts are there, it's an amount that's in a budget, the executive that's responsible for it has signed off, has said yes, this is okay, you validate it all, it makes sense big picture, and you put your name down to it. It's a very monotonous job, there's no glory to it. It's like, if you're detail oriented, great, that's definitely a good quality, but if you're looking for getting involved in something, this is not it, to be really honest with everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So if there is nothing further, the counselors are on the board. Yes. Oh, sorry, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah.
Missed you.
I'd like to motivate Caleb. The reason being that, if I've ever seen somebody do so much monotonous accounting work in my life, it's probably they the most. I apologize for pronouns, I'm really bad at this, but they has worked in a church as the treasurer, and they has also worked in the PSSA as the VP Finance, and I've just seen millions of pages of financial documents and numbers being kept track of. So I think if anybody is prepared to do such a monotonous job, it is Caleb.
Thank you. Okay. Is there? Oh, yes.
To vote, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no speakers list really, so if there's nothing further, we can vote. So there's 2 signing officers that we are voting for. Oh, you did that. Thank you. That was easy. Oh, here.
Wait, so it's...
Yeah, it's 2 out of the ones on the board. There's 3 signing officers.
But one is an executive.
Yeah.
So that comes back to general counsel. Like, this is for just for the counselors. Or I guess if sign officers on the agenda, we do it.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
So after this, we'll do that.
Just like pull off.
Oh, these are the ones that are...
Yes. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Hand it in. Send an email saying like, hey, I want to be on. All good. Send an email. Don't send it to my CSU email because you have that.
Thank you. These are filled? Oh, they're empty. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you can send it to my CSU email.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. It does. I just don't like getting emails. Like, don't bother me. Okay, then.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I need a paper trail for this one. You guys are weird.
Sorry.
Anyone else?
Some people must. Wait, did you put my...
No, it's there.
Yo, I feel the...
What?
That That's literally me every time I go out to drink.
Oh, this.
Because I like, you know, you have your first glass and you're just like giggling and shit. You're like, I don't think this is enough. And then it's like 4 shots later, you're just like,
that was
I'm a student and I like life. That's true.
so good.
I'm honest.
Look at the agenda. Right now, what has been
same. I don't know.
Okay, what's this?
I was just like, hey.
Not saying that I don't love, but I'm just fighting this.
Oh my god, Akira, we have so much to discuss. You don't send me text messages like that, and you're just out here sitting next to me like, just like, there's so many screens of blue, and I'm just like, oh my god, we don't even like contact me. Ooh, what is that? Is that gum?
And if I'm not reelected, I need to talk to you more than you are.
I'm up on the guys.
Not to sign.
You!
Can it signing authority?
Yes!
Not a threat, like,
Oh my god, this is making me feel so good. Don't stop. Oh, stop. Okay. No, you can stop. Fuck you. You're trash. Come correct. Was that your new office?
No, it's a patch office. All of them is okay, because all of the volunteers.
It's true. I got this plot down and I was like, why do you spend $700 on a car rental in Vancouver? And I come back and oh my god.
It's like the falafel, like, fusion. It was actually not bad.
Like,
Falafels are dry, man. I can't do this.
No, this is like a car rental and like $90 meetings.
I actually
I literally sat there and someone I knew was walking through who's like not involved in CSU anymore. It was like X, and I was like, look at this, and they're like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this.
Oh, I thought first person type that. So like you have your thing blocked. It happens even if
Yeah, even if you have your readers off. You know, as soon as I learned how to turn all of them off, I turned it off so fast.
Oh yeah, and Jared, not so good. Jared.
Alright, so appointed, alright everyone, appointed as, sorry, did I say the wrong thing? Appointed as signing officer is Rory with Samantha and Rowan in a tie. So you can't add a signing officer, so we have to do a runoff basically.
Part 2.
So thankfully, thank you very much, Michaela. So now it's just one vote from from Rowan and Samantha. Sorry.
Shit. I really don't. Some of those unprepared things.
I am the same thing.
Say it, you write it.
Thank you.
No, I always have like 12 lipsticks and no pens.
Okay, you have a pen. Hurry up, write it.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. I'm not voting.
This side.
Lexi.
Thank you. And Chris. Nope, Patrick. No. Chris.
Okay, reparation. I want my 40 acres and a mule, okay? I'm not talking shit, I'm talking actual fact.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
It goes a long way.
Yeah. What? Sorry?
It goes a long way.
That was 2 ballots.
Let me count them.
That was 2 ballots from him in your.
I know that.
Okay.
I'm gonna count them. Don't worry.
I just want to hang out with the office account.
Has anyone not given in their ballot?
Yeah.
Sammy, did you vote?
Sammy, did you
For
vote?
what? Did you vote?
Between Rowan and Samantha.
Oh, no, can I vote?
Oh, yeah, sure. Here.
No. Are you?
Turn the page.
I don't fuck with them like that.
Between.
What's the last one?
It's only because like
put this
they
in the
made
official
me,
job
and
description.
I really
Holder of the
feel
ballot.
like I literally got forced out of my house to go. I like don't really think they're that hot. I just don't. I don't vibe with them like that. No. So like the people who do this stuff, I'm friends with them. And like I'm glad that I'm their friend. I just don't like fucking going to their parties anymore. Because it doesn't like it's very obvious that they know that like they they're the only ones that offer.
Have I not
Like
done any of those?
they pretty much monopolize that market because they monopolize that market and there's no competition. Like their events can be trash and people can complain, but like they don't have to do anything about it.
I came in and like the
Because,
folder
like,
was just like broken.
They're the only ones. Now, if they were competing with like another party planning company that was like having events at like the Boulevard, Lagoon, like people,
I
they're
feel like
guys
it's been there for years, but I also feel like it's the third one this year.
I hated it. I thought it was trash. I think it's because you've never been to like one of their really good ones. Like this one was like did you not see how many underage girls were there?
Funny because I was paying attention to nobody.
Well, I wasn't paying. Well, yeah, and you like obviously because Kara was there. Kara beat your ass. What? What's up? Are you about to ask about my hair? Oh, okay, I was about to. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Some of these.
What's up?
It's just something.
What's up?
I don't mean to say.
What's up? Why are you scared? Just say it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're always in the office when we sign. Like
Oh.
a friend of mine.
Oh, cool. Is she also black?
Oh, he.
Oh, cool. Is he also
said
black?
you are the type
Yeah,
of
he is.
boyfriend.
Oh, I mean, sure. Like, it's not that. I need a picture. I need a sense of what's going on. Oh, are we just similar or like?
Both. Like,
which means that
I love how during CSU breaks, people try to hook people up. I like this.
I would love to.
Wait, can I see a picture? Can I see a picture?
More beach, less plants.
You might not be like,
Follow the market.
it's not like
Is he okay?
he doesn't look like how
So is he like one of those? Oh my god, he has
The
a
free
cute
market has
personality.
been the most powerful force.
you have to
Princess, I'm about to whack you on the back of the head.
Yo, come correct. Let's not. I vibe with a lot of people. That doesn't automatically mean that like.
No, but I feel like on a deeper level, like actually.
Aw, Sammy. That's so sweet. I'm
Extra.
what?
Why so extra? That's okay. I have a friend who I think will vibe with you.
I'm saying.
Cool. Like, let's see what's up.
Met me? What do you mean? Why am I being so extra?
Is he like this? Is he like that? 'Cause, like, I can be like this.
Well, it's because it's within my range.
You don't. You really
Look at
don't.
everybody's gone. There was an actual picnic, so let's
It is going out with that amount of sad.
If you're trying to hook me up with mans, like you gotta know what's
since everybody's already
gonna
on it, it's a
happen.
real picnic.
Sammy, I'm just fucking with you. Honestly, like you're cool. I'm just really extra. And
Okay,
she's not
sorry,
extra.
there was,
That-
sorry everyone. I for some reason received way fewer ballots than counselors, so you don't all have to vote, you can abstain, but I just needed to add up so that we can proceed with this and I don't get accused of fraud.
Anyway.
Yeah, just vote for the same person, it's not a big deal. I received way fewer amounts of votes than there are counselors, so something seemed a little bit off. Just, yes, you can abstain, just write abstain, please, for my own. Yeah, just, we are redoing the vote.
People
To
should
just
vote.
vote for the person
You
that you
fought for
voted
your right to vote, so you should vote.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm just repeating. Like,
Sorry?
Actually, hold up.
Sorry?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, can you pass?
it's waving that out. Yeah, no, not good. Are you going? Oh, sorry. Here you go. Yeah, I love that. Is that all he's gonna sing the
CSU
entire night
exec give you
too?
permission
Because
to
like
take a
it's
pen
supposed to be a
from
whole
the
night long thing, and like he's a one-hit wonder. He's literally like, is he just gonna sing "Ya Patiarma"?
He's a DJ.
Since when is Charlie Black a DJ?
I'm just saying, maybe he's there as just like a commentator, but yeah, okay.
No, he's
Why? Why?
Oh, it's good, it's good.
Yes,
It's good, it got glued back together, so it's all good.
I think he's definitely gonna
That's
perform,
literally what
but like I'm
happened.
just thinking, DJ, you're a one-hit wonder. That's
What?
yeah, you have Patiarma. That's you know, 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, 4.
I don't think it's necessary. You should just play the music.
Bruh, no, he's going to perform. There's a reason why there's a stage, and it's at a theater. They did this shit last year. You're gonna go watch a performance.
Nope, not gonna be there.
When one-hit wonders perform their one hit, and then like all the other songs don't get goes on. No.
It might be actually the extension cord or something.
No, it's plugged in. My shit works.
No, like the black one, is it plugged in over
Yes,
there?
it is. It's a plugged in over there.
CAF.
Yeah, and the CCSL, and then I think we might be going to.
Oh, it's fine now.
Wait.
Must be my.
Oh, it's like. I forget the.
Are you whatever.
Google the CSU website.
But yeah,
So there's,
like he's going. It's a theater shoot. They booked the theater, and then they invite girls to like work on stage and shit. And I'm just like, oh. It's like it's not fun, and the reason like, and I can they like don't.
So usually special council meetings have minutes there, but it's just only because it's really last minute to get booked,
Right.
and we tried our best, but because it was a long weekend,
Are you texting me?
If you want, Ali and I are gonna watch some of those trashy television.
Yeah. No, it is. I tried looking for it before.
What kind of trash? Yeah, we've been in rooms. I mean, that were booked that were
Formal Arabic.
I mean, no, it's just what I don't understand is why.
I mean, there'll be subtitles because.
Just ask
yeah.
What
is that?
Wow, it's almost like we have the executive policy,
Sorry?
the policy student union.
It's like there.
I know, it's almost like both of the president and the
there's a
VP.
state conference upstairs. It's honestly the
How's
only
Carrie
thing
doing?
you really do is just
I
ask
texted you being
questions.
like, I hope you guys are like chilling now, and you never
Yeah,
replied.
there's
I was like, I guess that's a no.
H1220.
That sounds
Oh,
fun.
are you making dinner now? Are you
Yes, I remember to make dinner yesterday.
Oh, I'm so proud of you.
All right, everyone. So your signing officers for the year are Rory and Samantha. So congratulations.
Look forward to seeing
Yo,
you guys
feminism.
frequently.
All sorts of shattering
sorry.
glass.
Wow.
Sorry.
Patriarchy is
All right,
over.
everyone, order please. Okay, so as we just need a procedural motion to appoint Sophie as well as the signing officer. Yes, Rory?
Moved.
Okay, wait a second. Margot? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of appointing Sophie, please raise your placards. 10, 11, all those opposed? 1, and any abstentions? 0. All right, so that carries. Sorry, 11. 1. All right, yes. So moving on, we are now at Concordia Council on Student Life, and this one is Michelle.
All right, CCSL,
Order, please. Michelle's talking.
CCSL is the Concordia Council on Student Life. It is the highest body in the university dedicated to student life. It's a parity committee made up of equal numbers of students, staff, and faculty. They are administered by the Dean of Students. They meet once a month during the academic year to discuss a variety of student life topics, disperse funding to student-led initiatives, and recognize outstanding individuals at Concordia. The main thing they do is funding. They also have something called the Special Projects Fund, not the same as the other committee I spoke about. Last year they distributed about $135,000 to student projects. Some projects they've done in the past are like Waste Not, Want Not. Yep, cool. There are 7 seats for students. The CSU executive motions to make those 2 executive seats, myself and John Hutton, 2 students at large, and 3 counselors.
Thank you. So if anyone would like to nominate themselves to sit on the Concordia Council on Student Life, yes, Rowan?
Just a question, does that need to be like a motion that's passed
That-
to
that-
allocate
yeah,
the
because
seats?
there's no, it's not like the student life coordinator is officially on CCSL. It's just 2 students.
Margot?
Second that motion.
Sorry, the motion was to appoint yourself?
To appoint myself and John
Okay.
Hutton.
All right, just seconded by Margot. Yes, Rory?
Can I move to amend just a typographical thing? Well, maybe it's not typographical, but to amend that it's your positions, so that for future years it is established that it's the finance and it's student life that sit on CCSL, versus the motion of like appointing you and John.
Are you moving to,
Amend to the position, not the executive name.
the thing is only going to stand for the year, so if you want to amend.
Why would it only stand for the year?
Because we're moving for the year.
It's
You would have to change the standing
Are
regs.
we only doing it for the year?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to do it again.
It's like one of those seats
Okay,
that
fine.
an executive
Yeah.
can take, so it's kind of like this executive sits down and like gives up tasks.
And then we'd also need the motion to have the 3 student at large and the 3 counselors and 2 student at large, if that's what council wants.
Right. So the current motion on the table is to have Michelle and John Hutton sit on the CCSL. Is there any discussion? Okay, is there any opposition? Alright, perfect. So that carries unanimously. Moving on, you said the next motion was...
Yeah, so that leaves 5 other seats for students. I motion to have 3 counselors and 2 student at large.
Okay, do we have a second? Rowan, do you want to motivate?
Just to keep things equally divided between exec counselors and to keep seats open for students that are not part of council.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion to have 3 students at large and 2 counselors? Is that right?
3 counselors
And 2 students at large. Something sounded wrong. Thank you. All right. So if there's no discussion, is there any opposition? Okay. So if not, that carries unanimously. And at this point, we can begin to fill the seats. Yes, Jad?
I nominate myself.
Okay. Do we have a second? Rowan?
Point of information?
Yes.
Are there any restrictions for that committee?
Nope.
Okay.
The only restriction is that you can't yourself apply to the CCSL for money while you're sitting on it.
Wait, you guys like your
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like personally or like anything?
Like, if I'm the head of a club, I can't apply as the head of a
Maybe
club.
not, you might just have to sit out that vote.
Okay. Can somebody clarify the rule on this?
I can clarify because I know of individuals who sat on it last year, who applied, who got funding. Who sat on, who voted, and got funding.
But isn't that
Okay. So yeah.
But that's a
if nobody
CCSL
knows-
thing. That's like.
Yeah, this is external
It's
to
not.
council.
It's not against. Yeah, it's like there's nothing against it. It's just it would be ethical for that person to abstain from that vote. There's nothing to prevent them from applying or from sitting on the committee.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to nominate themselves? Yes, James. Or
Nominate David.
do you consent?
I do.
Okay. Paige.
Can I nominate me?
Yes. Do you have a second? Princess. Moving along. Is there anyone else who'd like to nominate themselves? Okay. So if not, I'll give you a couple seconds to motivate. Jad. Sorry.
The reason why I want to nominate myself is because I hear a lot around school that there's a bunch of people that, like a bunch of different organizations that I've met, and all of them are somehow, they have great ideas, they just don't know how to get money for their projects. So being on that committee would allow me not only to spread that message out that they could get money, but also show them the procedure on how to get it and like on the process of getting there. So.
Thank you. David.
Well, personally, I haven't been really involved in anything school related, so I'm looking to branch out a little bit more, and I really wanted to join, much like council. I'll join this in order to interact with you guys and potentially make like new friends, and I want to be just more involved. And having experience dealing with customers there, I work also. Sorry. I would like to say that this position really does fit exactly what I'm looking for, something to interact with everybody, and not only that, I'll also be in charge, well, somewhat of their funding, which would definitely be really like awesome to do. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Paige.
I just want to do it. I just want to be on.
Thank you.
Just do it.
Okay, so at this point we have 3 nominees for 2 seats, and they are 3 nominees for 3 seats. There we go. And they are Jad, David, and Paige. So council can either omnibus or motivate. Yes, Margot. Okay. Do we have a second? Paige. All right. So is there any discussion on omnibus? All right. All those in favor, please raise your placards. 11. All those opposed? 0. And any abstentions? 0. All right, so that carries. Jad, David, and Paige, you are now on the Concordia Council for Student Life. And with that, we can move on to the Library Services Fund Committee. And Michaela.
Yeah, so the Library Services Fund Committee is a very interesting committee because basically we all pay money into this fund, $1 per credit. It was just, there was just a referendum to have another 10 years of this. So it's kind of like a partnership with the CSU and Concordia. I sat on this committee this past year, and it's not a huge commitment. It's really fun. There is amazing food. Let me just clarify. There is amazing, amazing food. It is catered, and it's so good. Also, you get paid to be on this committee.
What?
So,
Okay, order please.
So in the sense of also being on Senate, you get basically the equivalent of one course paid. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So things that we're funding is basically the 24-hour library access, which isn't negotiated, but that fund supports our 24-hour access. Otherwise, we would not have it without students paying. The library loans, that's done through the fund. Also, the course textbook reserves and free 3D printing, the living walls and plants, a lot of stuff, just to give you an idea.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, the floor is open to nominations. Rowan?
Wait, I just have a question.
Oh, yes, was it just before?
What's the time commitment?
You meet about like 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay, thank you. Rowan?
Yeah, just another question. When you say you get reimbursed for a course, is it like you get reimbursed for the tuition that you're paying, or
You
Quebec
get a
rates?
check.
But is it like Quebec rates, or like if I'm
It's
out of
Quebec
pocket?
rate.
Okay.
It's not your actual. It's Quebec rate.
I'll see.
Okay, thank you. Rory?
Just to clarify for anyone else who hears about this around campus, because I know some people think that like we at the CSU, like council gets paid for stuff. People, like students getting involved get paid for things. CCSL has the sort of involvement fund. So anything you do on campus that's related to the administration, like if you sit on a faculty council at any of the departments, etc., or you sit on Senate, or you sit on Board of Governors, you sit on these things. If it's involved in school governance from the university's sort of eyes, then they reimburse you like your 3 credits at the Quebec tuition rate, no matter what you pay. If you're international, if you're out of province like me, you still get your like Quebec amount, etc. If you are a part-time student, that's one thing to keep in mind. I think you do get paid a little bit less. So to get paid the full 3 credits, you have to be full-time.
Thank you.
It is work too, but it's a committee with less work. The library services fund.
It's never about getting paid. It's just like,
Yeah.
that's just what happens.
Okay, so at this point, I'll open the floor to nominations. Yes, Chad?
I would like to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'd like to
Second.
nominate.
Oh, sorry. I'll use you as a
Sam.
second. Yeah. You also want to?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second? Patrick? Margot?
I'd like to nominate H.
Okay, do you consent?
Yes.
Okay. Is anyone else? Yes, so
I'd like to nominate myself.
okay, do we have a second?
Sorry, how many seats?
There are how many seats? Sorry.
I'm like literally. So I think there's 2 for exec and 2 for council. There was me. I think it's 2, but I'm gonna confirm. Sorry.
Yes, please. Second for Sophie. Okay. Oh yes, Margot.
I'd also like to nominate myself.
Okay, do we have a second? Paige. All right, we'll just wait for Michaela to confirm. Well, I guess, does anyone else want to nominate themselves? Okay, so if not, we can move to motivations. Chad?
The reason why I want to be in this committee particularly is because I spent so much time at the library, and second because it's actually a nice library and it provides a lot of services that otherwise we couldn't have had. And a lot of the things when I first came to Concordia, I realized like, wow, this library is actually crazy with the amount of information it provides its students. And being part of that process not only would be good for me, but also good for the library itself, because yesterday, for example, I realized that it's actually not 24/7 during the summer, which is one thing that a lot of my friends were like crazy about. So having that said, that library is nice, but it needs people to keep it nice. So I want to be one of those people.
Thank you. Second.
I'm sorry to steal the 2 points that you just made, but literally the same thing just happened to me last night. I was studying, and at 10 o'clock, I discovered that the library closes at 10 in the summer. And I was disappointed because I had a midterm this morning. And let's be honest, this library is kind of our second home pretty much. And there's so much potential for this library. So let's take care of it. Let's turn it into something better.
Thank you. Paige?
I think libraries are stellar. I think that our library could do a lot to help the students that go to it and use it regularly, and also maybe do like other kinds of library related outreach.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sophie?
I already said I'm not that passionate about the library.
Thank you. Marco?
I use library services all the time. Like without the library services, there are like very few classes that I could afford to like have books for, or like a computer to write out my notes. I use the services all the time, and I know how important accessibility is. I'm actually super passionate about like libraries are pretty much the only place that you can exist without like in public space without having to pay money. That's not like a park. And even then, parks are policed and stuff, and there's politics behind that, and like green spaces. But like libraries are vitally important to dissemination of information, to like efforts to make people more socially conscious. And I think there's work to be done within our own library. I know like security has had issues with like ousting people who are like homeless, who want to have access to the books, or like all sorts of things. There's work to be done that I would like to do.
Thank you. Michaela, can you just confirm every spot?
2 counselors.
2 counselors, okay. Patrick?
I would like to motivate for Sammy. I think Sammy hasn't had the chance to be on many committees yet, and I also think that he's a hardworking individual who will show up for these meetings, minus the pay, whatever. But I think like this is a guy who truly cares about the library services fund. So like 100%, I think he will be a good representation on this fund.
Thank you. Alex?
I would also like to motivate for Sammy. Numerous times I've been in the library late at night. I've seen Sammy there diligently working. I think if anyone can tell us how important it is to be able to work there late at night, it's Sammy. And as well, because Sammy's not on very many committees, I think it's very good just from a council perspective to be able to get more representation for those councillors who are not on committees.
Is there anyone else? If not, we can.
Is that the entire list?
Yep, that's it. Sammy, Paige, Margot, Jad. So we're voting for 2 individuals. So if there's no one else, we can move to a vote. And now I'm out of paper.
There's some in the middle.
Oh, there is. Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so remember, there's 2 names or abstain, 1 name and abstain, 2 abstains, as long as it equals 2 in the end.
No. Oh. Got it. Yeah.
I never go there. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Hey, I should be allowed to.
All good. Thank you.
It's never gonna happen for them.
Has anyone not voted? Yeah, over here. Yeah. I'm gonna wait outside with the ones. Are you guys all good? Samantha and Sophie, did you vote? Or did you hand it in? Oh, okay. Sorry.
And when I get there, I was like, I don't understand. And my dad's like, wait, Princess, you don't ever pay to go on dates. I was like, do you see the rest? Like, I pointed at all
I'd be
the
scared if
restaurants
someone
that
was
I've
wearing a
been to,
giant
like,
mask in my face. I'd be
downtown.
terrified. Like if I turned the corner and saw someone
This
with
is how
this
we make
button on their
preparations for
face,
like women not being able to like vote or and then I was like, and I'm a black woman too, so you know it's not just like a couple of cocktails, it's a couple of courses.
I literally wore his outfit.
And my dad is just like,
No, I didn't have to let this
I was
out.
like, how does I do? And then my dad's like, that's a very interesting form of preferences. And I was
I
like,
had the tweed coat, the white t-shirt,
you
with
can
jeans and
do.
shoes.
And I was like, I gotta like make up for it
Oh yeah, I had a
somehow. I was like,
half
don't
hat.
forget, I'm woman, but I'm also black. I also haven't gotten any representation. And then I got really fucked up. Like, you're gonna get mad at me for this. And I was like, Jewish people got a country. Black people don't get anything yet. Like, and my dad goes, are we really gonna go there? I was like, yes, we're going there.
I was looking forward to it.
My dad's like, we're in public. I was like, I say that shit all the time in public. I don't know if I shocked more.
Going up on the wall.
My dad was so shocked. My dad literally was just like, you don't
Put it up
think
and
people. And I was like, I looked at him and he was like,
I'll put it up. I'll put it up to my current tournament with my roommates and go to McGill. I'll be like, who the hell is that?
what?
Oh, no, I mean, I had an alternate. The thing is, I had an alternate.
Yeah, there is. So, but and you just found out you can like send us an email you're like intro as of right now.
I watched the season. I thought the quality went.
All right, everyone. So your Library Service Fund Committee counselors are Sammy and Jad. Congratulations. You are now on the Library Services Fund Committee. Oops, sorry. All right, and Michaela, do we appoint counselors, or do we appoint execs, or is it student at large?
I'm not remembering what we did last year, but I would like to be on the committee.
I would also like to get
Okay, so me and Lexi.
Okay. The Library Services Fund Committee has 2 executive positions. So, yes, Paige? Okay, so Michaela and Lexi both nominated themselves to be on the Library Services Fund Committee in the executive positions. I trust there's no contention from any of the other execs. Perfect. Margot second. Does anyone have any discussion? What? Oh, sorry. Michaela and Lexi nominated themselves to be the 2 executives on the LSFC. So the committee that we just appointed counselors to also has 2 executive positions. So if there's no further discussion, is there any opposition to their being the executives on the committee? All right, perfect. So then that carries. So in addition to Sammy and Jad, Lexi and Michaela will also sit on the Library Services Fund Committee. Is there any more discussion we had before we move on? Yes?
Quick question on the committee. So the total amount of people that are sitting on that committee are 4?
So it's also administration and staff.
Okay.
So like the head librarian, Guylaine, and yeah, other people who work for the library basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
We can go.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point we're on the point of CSU Community Action Fund, and this, for some reason in my mind, it's the Sustainability Coordinator.
External.
External.
I can also
Oh,
do that.
okay.
I have like a little.
I have it right here.
Oh, okay.
Or I can read it. So the Community Action Fund is a committee that funds both on and off campus initiatives or organizations aligned with the CSU positions book and to accommodate costs needed by Concordia Undergraduate Student Association in the case of a binding strike mandate voted by said association. This committee prioritizes funding to marginalized groups as well as initiatives and organizations having scarce access to funding.
Thank you. Do you have the number of seats?
I do.
Always one.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I have no idea. No.
Oh, yeah.
Do you-
One counselor, one executive, one student at large, and then 4 community members that appoint their seats themselves.
Okay, so yes, Jeff?
So that committee is a committee that, like, in one simple phrase, what is that committee? Because like you were saying, the organizations, they have to be outside of Concordia and apply to that committee?
Does anyone have a direct response, Michaela?
It's both on campus and off campus. It's just it was a fund that was created 2 years ago, and basically it's for like kind of marginalized groups and communities that have not as much funding or not as much access, and it's a big fund.
In Montreal.
In Montreal.
Just a question.
James?
It's a question. Clarification. This is the $10 million fund?
No.
No, that's the sub fund.
This is
Thank you. Rowan?
So to clarify, this is $50,000 that comes off the interest from SLIC every year. It can accumulate up to $75,000, and it's for a specific purpose that I don't have memorized, but it's outlined in Special Bylaw I, if you want to look it up. But it's capped at $75,000, comes from the interest of the SLIC fund.
All right, thank you. Okay, would anyone like to nominate themselves to sit on the committee? Yes, Jad?
I nominate myself to sit on that committee.
Okay, do we have second? James? Moving along. James?
I would like to nominate myself to sit on the committee.
Okay, do we have second? Alex?
I nominate myself to sit on the committee.
Okay, do we have second? Jad? Patrick?
Point of information. So how many again are we appointing for this?
One.
Oh, I didn't see it in the bylaws. Where was that written? Or the standing regs?
Standing regulations.
Oh, because I saw 3 representatives. It doesn't
Not on
specify.
CAF is one executive, one student at large, and one counselor. The money is outlined in special bylaw. I don't know where the standing regulations is actually.
What do you want? I have
It's
sorry, I
book.
have it here. As per CSU Special Bylaw I, there are 4 CSU members independently appointed by an incorporated non-CSU organizations that collect fee from CSU memberships. 3 representatives appointed by the CSU. Whoa, why is this so poorly written?
Hashtag.
True.
Yes, Alex?
I would like, if possible, make a motion.
Yeah, there's no motion on the table.
Seeing as there's a clear interest for the community action fund by the councillors, and given that there's only 1 seat, I would like to move to make it 2 seats for the councillors.
Do we have a second? James, let me just make sure that we can do that first of all.
I know in the standing regs it just says 3 seats decided by council. It doesn't say how to divide it up.
I mean, what's the precedent that's been set?
So the
what
problem
was it
is-
like last? Sorry. Excuse me?
I just want to make sure that there's, because a standing regulation, you can not withstand it. I want to make sure there's not a bylaw because you can't not withstand that. Yes, Ron?
I mean, we can wait till we find out if it's possible.
How did it work last year? How did it work last year?
1 councillor, 1 student at large, 1 executive.
Okay, and how was that decision? Like, I mean, that's a precedent, right? Like, if
Yeah,
that was the way it was before, like,
It's a precedent.
Precedents aren't inherently binding.
Can I
Well,
just
yeah,
say
Yes,
something?
Michaela?
So I would just like to say that the people that we're prioritizing, which it says in the standing regulations, is so advocating for organizations that have Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other marginalized groups. So I personally am uncomfortable with only, right now sorry, I don't want to like label people, but basically it seems like we have like 1 person of color who's running, and I feel
Hey, policy committee, I got a query for you.
Thanks, Ben Prunty.
Did anyone hear that?
Michaela, can you confirm when CAF meets?
I've never sat on CAF. Kemi was going to be doing this, but I don't think it's super regularly. Rowan, do you know when they meet?
I mean, I haven't actually sat on it either. It's like.
I feel like it's around once a month.
Yeah, it's a funding committee, so I'd say
Yeah,
once a month
it's
sounds
not
about right.
Okay, under standing regulation 44, I'm going to defer this to policy committee because the bylaws are extremely unclear about it. So clearly there's not going to be a meeting before next June. So if everyone's okay with that, we can have policy come back with a coherent interpretation of what's going on. Is there any objection to that? All right, perfect, because they're not going to meet anyways before then. And that will be noted in my chairperson's report. Yes, James, did you have a question?
Alright, just a question. So since we've kind of come to the decision that policy should probably reinterpret the bylaws, would it be, does this also count as a motion to push this appointment in particular to next meeting?
Yeah, basically what happens is I can defer it to a committee and then
Right.
as under my authority, and then at the next meeting it's kind of implicit that it'll come back. So,
Okay, so
it'll come back in
next-
June.
So next meeting
Yeah.
in June, we will appoint the members of the
Yes.
CAF. Okay,
And have a
alright.
coherent response to how many
Alright.
people are supposed to sit on this
good.
committee. Policy
That said, that's
committee-
very soon. Just to say that I don't know when our June meeting the exact date is, but
it's in 3 weeks.
Okay.
So we can always table it again.
Yep.
It's not allowed. All right, like I said, that will be noted in my chairperson's report as I have deferred something. And then we can move on to, there was a point added, sorry, it's not on the agenda, because we only added 1 point last time, which was the online voting committee. I believe, James, you had brought this up?
Yes, I brought this up. Right, so as one of the initiatives for next year that I want to bring up, and I think I've spoken to a few people about this, and a lot of them are in agreement, that we should, one of the things we should do in our electoral reform stuff is to transition onto online voting. And this is essentially a committee that I want to create to kind of start studying the motion and to see how we can implement stuff like online voting specifically. This is like and I feel that it has to have its own thing because the other electoral reform stuff will have enough things on its shoulder as is, and this will study this very specific issue and single out online voting specifically and how we can implement the system similar to lots of other universities that have done. Essentially, almost every university in Canada except for Concordia has online voting. CASA JMSB has online voting, the GSA has online voting, and I think it's time for the CSU to have online voting as well. And this is the best way to do this, is to create this committee.
Thank you. Sophie?
Just to clarify, there's currently no committee on electoral reform. That's an ad hoc committee that has to be created in the June council meeting. And anything that's created at this council meeting has to be brought back to the June council meeting because this is just council-elect. Nothing is binding. We have to ratify that in June.
Thank you. Michaela?
Oh, yeah, I would just like to say that I personally think that online voting and the Electoral Reform Committee should be the same thing because both are, they're connected. They're too connected, and we can't separately change things with the election and standing regulations and then also have online voting. I think that'd be a lot of miscommunication. Also, the more committees, the less people are going to actually attend. We already have a lot. I think we should definitely look into online voting. You know, we've done research in the past, and we can update our research. I think it should be in the same committee.
Thank you. James and then Alex?
All right. Yeah. No. So, first of all, I would actually have to motivate to separate the committees. First of all, just clarification that, just because we create it now, yes, it's going to be ratified next June, we can omnibus ratify everything so we don't take up time next June. It's obviously a thing that I want to get over with. Second point is that the reason I want to divide it is that electoral reform can deal with a lot of other issues, but this committee would be dealing with, first of all, is online voting, would it be good for the CSU? And I believe it will be. The second thing is going to deal with is how are we going to implement this very specific point, whereas electoral reform can deal with much more broad issues such as, the voting methods, other things. But this is just, can we put voting online onto something like My Concordia, just like almost every other university does? And this issue is very specific, whereas electoral reform risks being too broad, and the issue of online voting risks being lost in all the other stuff that's going to be discussed and all the other stuff that can be discussed under the broad umbrella of electoral reform. So I believe that it's very important to kind of single out this issue because I believe it's an issue. It's an issue that's important to my constituents as engineering. It's one of the things that people have been asking for, is there online voting, And I think it's something that's very important when we talk about electoral reform in general. It's one of the more important issues, so I think we should single it out and not risk electoral reform being drowned out in all the other issues.
Just to be clear, there's no motion currently on the table, and we do omnibus ratify everything next meeting.
So
Alex?
I think there is a very good point to be made about that. Online voting in and of itself is a lot of work to plan out, figure out, and go off and discuss. Concordia, as it stands, has a thing they've done online voting in the past, but it's woefully out of date and frankly does not actually account for modern Concordia standards. I feel that it would be very good to have a committee that can dedicate their entire time to this and take a large amount of load off of the shoulders of the Electoral Reform Committee, because that's far from the only thing that we have to fix in the election. I think the Electoral Reform Committee already is going to be completely overburdened if we add this as well. And as well, there's a number of people who have either been on assorted groups within Concordia that use online voting, like say CASA JMSB, that I feel would be very good to get their specific input on this kind of stuff, rather than putting them on online on a separate, rather than combining all the committees together, where their help might not be as important. So I feel for that reason we should consider dividing it into two separate ones.
Thank you. Patrick and then James?
I move to establish a committee called the Elections and Participation Committee with the mandate to bring online voting by the general elections of next year. And I was going to keep the composition to 7 people. I'll leave it to the council to decide. But yeah, this is a motion on the table now.
All right. Do we have a second? Throw on your motivation, Patrick?
Well, I think it's kind of pointless to keep it at the discussion level. Let's just actually have this motion and just see where this is going to go. I think it's definitely I guess it's definitely something that we should all be looking at and we should all be establishing. We're in 2018, and it's kind of amazing that we don't have online voting yet, and let's just get it done.
Thank you. Rowan?
Yeah, I think establishing a committee with explicitly saying like everyone's been saying we need to investigate that, and like I don't think there's been any disagreement in the room that we need to look into it, but then for people to go from we need to investigate to let's make a committee that has already decided what its final decision is doesn't make sense. There's a lot of good reasons for online voting. There's also things like the fact that the GSA almost had their elections invalidated last year, et cetera, et cetera. Like, this is a discussion. It's definitely worth having. I think creating a committee with a specific mandate to, like, with a specific end goal already set and decided just doesn't make sense. I think a committee that it's meant to look into online voting and meant to bring back a recommendation, whatever it be, to council makes perfect sense, but like having an end decision already before our mandate even starts doesn't.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a speakers list of Sophie, James, Rory, Patrick, and Alex. Sophie? Oh, sorry. Chris, not Patrick. Okay, so in that case it's...
Wow.
I'm so sorry.
I have no idea what's going on.
Sophie?
Just setting the mood for the council.
Yeah, I would just like to voice some concern about setting out an angle before a committee meets. I think before our mandates begin, while I agree that it's long overdue that we reassess everything, I think that online voting is something important that we bring to the table and research to ensure that if it is what's implemented and if it is what is decided to be best for participation, that's what's decided on. But I think that deciding before a committee meets, deciding before a mandate starts, a given outcome that this is what we will do, takes away potential research opportunities and like gaps in knowledge and security, especially. Security of elections is incredibly important, and I think that that is something that should be a priority as well. The CSU has a history of some pretty sketchy electoral practices, so before anything can go through, it's really important that we consider all options and are well researched and don't go in with a set goal in mind, because that goal, I don't know if you've ever done a research paper and come up with a hypothesis and then done all of your research and come out the other end and said, wow, my hypothesis was completely wrong and I need to rewrite everything. That's something that happens quite often, so I think that it's really important going in that we're going with the goal of researching participation, security of elections, and sustainability of elections, whatever that entails, but we can't be saying that this is the end goal of a committee that has not met or been mandated yet.
Thank you. James?
All right, yes. All right, so I kind of agree with a few things that were said here, especially concerning going in with a set decision, because I believe that, you know, while I agree with that we should implement online voting, I believe that the way it was presented, the motion itself, was a bit leading as to say that this is what we're going to do. So one thing that I would like to do is, if Patrick agrees, is to motion for a friendly amendment yes, we're creating the committee, but the mandate isn't to implement this. It's to, first of all, research the issue of online voting and how that can affect participation, and B, implement the decision it makes, whatever decision it makes, by next election. All right? So it's not we're going to do whatever committee decides. If the committee decides that there's nothing to be done, we're going to implement the decision of keeping status quo by next election, general election, not by-election. Or if it decides that we should go to online voting, we should work to implement that by next election. So I think that should be a good thing. So come up with a decision on the topic and then implement it by the next election. Also, if Patrick is okay with this, to modify the composition as 4 counselors, 1 exec, and 4 students at large, 1 from each faculty.
Okay, when a motion's been seconded, it no longer belongs to the person. So in that sense, it wouldn't be Patrick who'd have to be okay with it, it would be the whole room.
Okay.
So it's not technically Patrick's motion anymore. Usually if you want to make an amendment, do it before speaking. But I feel like this can actually maybe hurry things up a little bit so we can get out of here before 11:30. Is anybody opposed to the amendment that the composition be 4 people and that the mandate of the committee be, sorry, can you rephrase that?
Okay, so one exec, 4 counselors, 4 students at large, 1 from each faculty, because it's important to every faculty.
And the mandate be?
Mandate be to investigate the issue of online voting, come up with a decision, and implement that decision by the next general election.
Okay, is there any opposition to that? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Rory?
Before I voice any opposition. For information, I think this can be directly from Michaela. What is the composition of the Electoral Reform Committee?
We
Right now.
currently haven't, because last year it ends, like, I guess it's technically still happening, but until June 1st. But I'm so sorry, what was the exact composition again?
Oh, the one I proposed? The one I want to
Yes.
propose is 1 member of the executive, whoever the executive chooses,
Okay.
4 counselors, and then 4 members at large, 1 from each faculty, because this is an issue that's important to somebody from every faculty, and I think it's important that or I think there's 4 faculties? If there's
I don't know why you're looking at me.
There's 4 faculties, right? 'Cause there's 5. There's 4 faculties, okay.
100%.
There's 5?
Independent students.
Okay, fine, then modify that to, like, I want 1 from each category of student, basically.
Okay.
So,
This is literally not how you make motions at all.
All right.
I have a question and
yes.
I wanted it answered by one
That's-
person,
yes.
which is why I said to Michaela. So Michaela,
Yeah.
what is the composition of the committee right now?
So basically, there was no set out number because I wanted as many people to be part of it as possible. But that said, we didn't meet that many times. Yes, we have a document that we can bring forward for the next ad hoc, but I would recommend, I think representation is super important, but you also have to think about quorum and having enough people, and this is a very heavily, it's gonna be a lot of work to do adequate research. So, like I said, I like representation, but I would recommend less people, because we want to move it forward. And if you want something by next March, that's actually not a lot of time to be implementing an entire system, so if that happens.
Okay, so currently the amendment on the table is to have 1 exec, 4 counselors, 5 student at large, 1 from each faculty, and to investigate the issue instead of to bring online voting before the GEs. At this point, we are only talking about the amendment currently. Rory, you were next.
Okay, I have a few things to say about this. One, what I've heard everyone say so far is basically exactly what a committee would do. You're all debating about online voting, about why it should be, why it shouldn't be, what the considerations are, etc. Instead of, I guess, staying on topic, which is, do we need a committee? Should we have a committee? What will the committee be composed of? What will it be mandated to do? And then, more importantly, I guess at this point, is it the same thing as the Electoral Reform Committee? And is there a need for a separate committee? So I'm just going to remind everyone to keep the discussions about that, because whether you believe in online voting or you don't has nothing to do with whether there needs to be a committee on it. Secondly, I've seen online voting. I actually was one of the 2 people, my partner and I, who investigated it, implemented it for Casa JMSB 2 years ago, and it does take a lot of time. We were working very hard, just 2 of us, and it took us almost all year to get that project off the ground. So as Michaela has said, it's definitely doing anything with elections and anything with a big group and a board and having to bring it back multiple times and discuss it with people and do research, etc. Takes a lot of time. So I'm definitely in agreement with that. I think looking at how CSU does elections in general is a good thing. I think the Electoral Reform Committee that was struck last year was a great start in that direction. I think that it is time for the CSU to come back and revisit looking at other opportunities, be it online voting, be it ways to reduce the amount of money we spend on ballots, reduce the amount of money we spend on security guards, reduce the amount of money that we spend on the CEO. There's a ton of things that we do right now that are unsustainable ecologically, unsustainable financially, or I guess inappropriate financially. And I think that looking at all sorts of creative different ways of doing that is a good thing. So that's what I want to say for this.
Thank you. Okay, so remember, we're just talking about the amendment on the table, which is to investigate the issues and the composition being 1 exec, 4 counselors, 5 student at large, 1 from each faculty. Chris.
Alright, so basically what we're saying right now is let's write another report, which is basically going to conclude probably the exact same thing that we did last time, because I don't see what could have possibly changed since. I think it's very obvious that we should go in the direction of online voting. It's the obvious way of the future, and I think it's time we take a tough stance and we get it done by the next election cycle, and we should vote in according to getting that done.
Okay. We're just talking about the amendment. Does anybody have any opposition to there being 1 exec, 4 counselors, 5 student at large, and instead of the mandate being to bring online voting before the GEs, to investigate the issue? Does anybody have any opposition? Because we can't seem to stay on that topic. Yes, Rowan?
I do.
You're next on the speaker's list.
Wait.
So, yes, but only about that.
Can I split the vote?
Yes. Do we have a second? The motion is to split the vote, assumedly 1 being the composition and 1 being the mandate. Okay, seconded by Samantha. Do you want to motivate?
I mean, I think they're 2 completely different topics. There's a lot of discussion kind of back and forth on mandate, and then I think there's a discussion to be had around the composition of the committee as well. I think showing them both in when obviously people have stuff to say doesn't make sense.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to split the motion. Samantha. So to first discuss the composition and then to discuss the mandate. So all those in favor of dividing the question, please raise your placards. 5, 6. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And any abstentions? Okay, so that carries. We'll divide the question. So that means first we'll talk about the composition, and then we'll talk about the mandate. So, I mean, if everyone's okay with that order. Composition. James.
All right, so I believe that it's important for the composition to have at least 1 member from each faculty, because I do believe in kind of representation. This is something that affects all students, and I want at least 1 voice from each different faculty to see their views on this and see how they can contribute to the conversation and contribute to the decision that the committee will make and the decision that the committee will eventually implement, because that's also part of the mandate. Also 4 counselors, because that's essentially what the composition is on all the other counselors, and I think an exec should be there for good measure just because there's an exec on each committee. That's my reasoning. If anybody thinks that there should be a different composition, free to bring it up for the room. I think it's pretty reasonable, pretty rational, what I've proposed, and opening it up to discussion.
Thank you. Roy, and then David.
Yeah, I think as much as I'm all for faculty representation, I don't think we need to ensure that we have exact numbers on every committee, especially where this isn't an issue that affects an engineering student the same way it affects an arts and science student. This isn't something that actually breaks down along faculty lines, and also I think having 5 student at-larges on 1 committee is going to be hectic, because these are most likely 5 people who don't have a lot of experience around the CSU, as well as just it creates a massive committee. I also think it would be more appropriate to have a second executive, just because executives are paid and therefore kind of have the ability to do more work. But again, I think the issue at this point is that you have a committee of 4 counselors plus 5 students at large, so 10 people is ridiculous. That's a small council. That's quorum at a council meeting. You don't need that for a committee.
Thank you. David?
I guess I technically want to disagree with Rory, not Rory. Rowan. My bad. I'm actually going to talk. Rowan. And I want to agree with James that we do need this many people. And as Rory previously mentioned, he said that there were 2 people on a previous board to implement online voting, and nothing happened. So I think having this many people.
That's incorrect. We actually did implement online voting.
And it worked, but is it still a poll?
And then it was re-implemented this year and it was successful.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've done it for 2 years now.
Oh.
Since we started it. It has been so it
Okay,
does
so
take
then
a lot of work. It does take a lot of work.
To go on.
Okay, thank you for
Since it was a big burden on 2 people, having this many people on board would help delegate the work more efficiently and effectively.
Okay, we have speakers list of Patrick, Jad, Sophie, Alex, and Margot. And James. Patrick?
Can I amend?
Yes, we're allowed 1 more amendment.
Okay, I move to amend the composition to 7 members in total, because that's actually an optimal. If we want it not too big and not too small, I think 7's fine. So I would say 2 exec, 3 counselors, and that's 5, and 2 members at large.
Okay, do we have a second? Sophie? Do you want to motivate more than
Like I have dealt with committees in the past, and I find that like the bigger it gets, the more unproductive it gets. No matter of like just how much you want to do representation. I know it's something super important, and I get it. But we also want to get some stuff done. So why don't we just do it? Like why don't we just decrease it so that we have the appropriate amount of people, and it's not too burdensome on everyone. So that's why 7's a optimal number.
Okay. Is there any opposition to the amendment? All right, James.
All right. Well, yeah, so I kind of like to motivate that I do believe that representation from each faculty is very important. It was part of my mandate on which I got elected, and I got the second most amount of votes on engineering, so I think there's some pretty support behind my constituents behind that. I believe that there should be, because the way that it's formulated now, the 7 people with 3 counselors and only 2 members at large, it doesn't guarantee that there's going to be that representation from each faculty, and I think that's very important. And the more perspectives we have, the better decision we can come up with, and the less work can be put on each individual. So I think it's better for splitting the work. I think it's not that much difficult. It's only 10 members, so we're talking about a difference of 3 people, right? So, and I believe that my proposal, which is the 10 members, would be better because not only we get more representation and we have a similar distribution of work. So that's.
Thank you. Jad?
Listen.
Okay. Alex?
I'd consider perhaps amending it to 1 exec, 4
We
counselors.
can't amend it anymore. There's already been 2 amendments.
Then I rescind.
Sophie H.
Yep. So I just wanted to kind of go back to something that's been voiced a few times. I have no idea if I will be listened to or heard, but I'll say it anyway. Basically, having sat on many committees and been part of many different things, I think it's really important that we consider the sheer amount of people. 10 people might not sound like a lot right now, but I guarantee you come October it will be. Everyone will be busy, everyone will have midterms, and everyone will have other commitments. So making sure that it's a reasonable number to reach quorum. The motion on the table says 7 members total. I agree that that's more people, but still a reasonable amount. I think that will still be enough to divvy up the work fairly. The other thing is as this will have 2 executives' jobs, literally full-time, 5 days a week, just doing work on this. So we will have a lot more capacity to help in terms of sharing work and labor for counselors. We will also have a lesser course load than many counselors. So it's important to consider that, like, 10 people is actually quite a lot when it comes time to midterms and finals, and everyone's rushing around like a chicken with their head cut off, especially when something as important as electoral reform, which might have to go through to a referendum to get anything done. Just consider that there are a lot of deadlines we will have to meet, and a lot of people will have to meet very consistently in order to get this done, and just 10 people is a lot of people.
Thank you. Sophie B.
Yeah, well, first of all, if we look at the student application and the elections, not a lot of people are taking part of it, so trying to get 5 people involved in this project when most people don't seem to care, I don't think it's really necessary. Also, if you look at the issue at large, like the idea is to implement online voting. I don't know if we need to be like that many people in a committee deciding on that, just in the way of establishing it. If we can already build on what CASA has done or other university, I don't think we need to be that many people. And also, if your goal is to get things done by March, then we should try to reduce the committee as much as possible. So on that note, I'd like to move to a vote on this.
Call the question.
Call to question.
Everyone. I'll accept it. We're just going around in circles. The call to question isn't supposed to come with a debate or a precursor, but I feel like we're all just going around in circles saying the same thing. So in that case, is there any opposition to a call to question? Oh, perfect. All right. So in that case, what we're voting on right now is the amendment for the committee to be 7 members in total, 2 execs, 3 counselors, and 2 members at large. And this is being amended from 1 exec, 4 counselors, 5 students at large, 1 from each faculty. Right? Does everyone understand? Mm-hmm. Getting faces. Okay. So all those in favor of the 7 members, please raise your placards. 10. All those opposed? 1. And any abstentions? 1, 2, 3. Sorry, David. Alright, so that carries. Okay, so in the motion, we currently have 7 members in total, 2 execs, 3 counselors, and 2 members at large. The initial motion was 7 people, so this is specifying it. And now we can move on to the issue of the committee's mandate, as the question was divided previously. James.
Right, so mandate, as I explained previously, would be to investigate the issue of online voting, come up with a decision, and then implement that decision, whatever it is, by the time for next election. Because it's going to investigate the issue of online voting, come up with a decision, and then try to implement it by the next general election. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. If the decision is to keep status quo, no work needed on that part. If the decision is to implement online voting, let's try to get that done.
Thank you. So the amendment on the table is to investigate the issue instead of the mandate being to bring online voting before the GEs. Rory.
I feel like this, maybe we should be dividing this question as well, or maybe dividing as a sub-question, as to whether this should be part of the existing reform committee or not. Because the existing electoral reform committee has a mandate, we can change that mandate, but has a rather open mandate about electoral reform. And if we're going to mandate that this committee does something but then vote later that it's part of another committee, like, I think this is a very related issue. We should be deciding this first before deciding what the mandate of this is. See what I mean?
The motion on the table is to establish the Elections and Participation Committee with the mandate to bring online voting before the GEs, and the amendment on the table is to change to bring online voting to be to investigate the issue. So
right, but
basically,
there's no point in approving that amendment and then having the main motion fail just because we want it to be the same committee as before, right? Like, we're going to all debate and discuss about the mandate for it and then pass it or not pass it. Like, we could pass or not pass establishing a committee and then say, okay, can we all agree on a mandate for it? Or we can say, should it be part of the existing committee? And then, I don't know, I just feel like maybe there's a better way to do this.
council seconded
Up to you.
Samantha.
May I make an amendment?
The amendment on the table is currently to investigate the issue. Is that what you want to amend?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to defer it to a committee. I would like to make a suggestion. I would like to suggest that prior to making any further moves towards online voting, I think that it's important to hear from the student body on what they believe is what they believe we should do with online voting. I suggest conducting a poll as the CSU has done in the past to gain their perspective, and in this case it can be used as viable proof of whether or not this will be impactful enough to fully implement it.
Okay, so just to clarify, were you moving to defer the whole issue to committee? Like the whole issue of creating?
Not the whole issue of creating, but the issue of investigating it.
Okay, so the motion is to defer
the
amendment to committee. However, we still have to vote on the motion, so you can't do that.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
No, I was just figuring it out.
No, that's good. That's good. We try. Rowan?
Percent.
All right. So David, James, and then Rory. David, where are you?
I want to clarify something before I say this. As of the end of this meeting, can we set a committee like down on the ground, or we have to wait till next meeting?
Well, the committee, nothing's binding currently. We have to ratify it in June, but like the committee can get started and start working if they want. It's just the actual act of creating the ad hoc committee officially happens in June when all of this is ratified. The same as all of your appointments, because technically this council isn't council yet until June 1st. So that's why we make a bunch of decisions, because 2 weeks in is a little bit too late so everyone can get started on their stuff, but it's technically not council until June 1st when your mandate takes over.
Okay, well, I rescind.
Okay, James?
Alright, yeah, so just to address a few issues that we're first of all, we're motioning on the amendment, so I don't think you should take into consideration whether you think that the committee should be a thing or not in the first place, but when you're voting for it. The second issue is, if we create this online voting committee, and I think we should create this online voting committee separate from the electoral reform committee, when we get around to bringing the electoral reform committee, we can then debate whether or not we need the electoral reform committee if online voting was the only thing they were going to try to investigate. And if it's not the only thing they were going to investigate, then I believe that online voting is such a big issue in and of itself that it would either take up too much time of the Electoral Reform Committee or not be done properly because the Electoral Committee is focusing on too many things. So either the Electoral Reform Committee will have to focus exclusively on online voting, in which case it's going to be an online voting committee, or the online voting is going to be a botched job because it requires just that much time. So I believe, so please vote for the mandate, which is to investigate, come up with a decision, and implement by next election. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick?
I call the question.
Okay, do we have a second? Alex, is there any opposition to calling the question? Okay, so what we're voting on currently is the amendment, so whether or not you want to bring online voting before the general elections of next year, or investigate the issue of online voting before the general elections of next year. All those in favor, please raise your placards.
Of calling to question.
Yeah, no, there was no opposition to the call to question.
Okay.
It passes. All good. So this is just on the amendment. All those in favor, please raise your placards. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that carries. The motion currently on the table is to establish the Elections and Participation Committee with a mandate to investigate the issue of online voting before the general elections of next year, and the composition being 7 members in total, 2 executives, 3 councillors, and 2 members at large. Currently, the speakers list from before is Chris, Alex, and then Sophie, and then James.
Which Sophie?
Sophie. Okay, so if you don't remember what you wanted to say, you can just repeat. This is from before. Okay, Alex?
I think as it stands right now, we've decided on the committee, how it's going to be formed, what it's going to do, who's going to be on it as a general idea. I think at this point we should just vote on the committee, get people on it, and get this done with so we can leave before like 11:30. Thank you.
Sophie?
I rescind.
Okay, James?
Alright, so once again, I would like to say for any questions about whether or not this should be merged with the Electoral Reform Committee, I believe that it's such a big issue that it risks either taking too much time or not being done properly if it's on the Electoral Reform Committee, so I believe it should be its own separate thing. And now that we're going to be voting on it, I hope everybody takes that into consideration. If there's any opposition to that, voice it really soon, so we can get this question called as quickly as possible.
David and then Sophie?
Wow, I was gonna call the question.
Okay, do we have a second? Or
I
did
just
you
have
have
a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, what is the mandate, the electoral committee as it is? What's in their mandate? Because we're trying to do a subcommittee, but
The election, yeah, Sophie, I know you.
There's no electoral reform committee as of right now. It has no mandate. It was an ad hoc committee that was struck up last year and has not been called again for this year. It will be called again for this year, but as of today, it has no mandate. It does not exist.
Right, thank you. Okay, so there was a call to question. Is there a second? Patrick? All right, is there any opposition to the call to question? All right, so the motion on the table, I will just read it again for you. So the motion is to establish the Elections and Participation Committee with the mandate to investigate the issue of online voting before the GEs of next year, and to keep the composition to 7 people, 2 execs, 3 councillors, and 2 members at large. All those in favor, please raise your placards. 7, wait, can we just do that all in unison, please? 6, 7, 8, 9. All those opposed? 1, 2, and any abstentions? 1, 2. All right, so that carries. The Elections and Participation Committee, ad hoc committee, has been created with the mandate as stated. All right, yes, Paige?
Can I request a recess? Can we do that?
Is or
sorry.
Before a vote.
Yeah, because we're gonna have to appoint
we already-
people to.
Oh, I
Can
thought
we get the
Yeah.
voting bit done for
Yeah,
this?
sorry, I thought it was.
No, it's okay. All right.
Just so like we're not in the middle of ones.
Yeah,
no,
I
it's
feel
all
you.
good.
Okay.
Like this whole council meeting is in the middle of.
Yeah. No, I get it.
No, it's cold.
It's cold. There's no bathroom.
Okay, if Okay, if anyone needs to use the bathroom, you can go and come back. It's not a huge thing. People need to use the facilities sometimes. Okay, so at this point it's up to council if they want to appoint 3 councillors currently or wait until the next meeting. Yes, James?
I would like to appoint the councillors, please.
Okay. Do you have anyone you want to appoint?
Well, I would like to nominate myself, obviously, for the committee.
Okay. Do you have a second? Did you have a
Yeah, I second.
You wanted to point a board?
I just have a question. It's not clear what committees are, whether it's 2 separate committees.
Well, as of right now, it is one committee.
It
It's
is
the
one.
Elections and Participation Committee. So
Okay,
we'll
and that
appoint.
includes the online voting.
Yeah, it's the one with the mandate to investigate the issue of online voting. Okay, so we have one prospective appointee. Sophie?
Well, I think that we should vote next week because there's some councillors that are in there that don't know about this committee and they maybe want to be part of it. So I think we should leave it to the next meeting.
Okay, so is that a motion to table?
Yeah, I'm motion to table the.
Okay, do we have a second, Margot? Okay, so a motion to table doesn't require a debate, so all those in favor of tabling till next meeting, please raise your placards. So this is the June 14th.
Do we have any debate on this?
No, there's no debate on the table.
Okay.
Yeah. All those in favor, please raise your placards.
Yeah.
7, 8, all those opposed? 0, and any abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, 5. Okay. So the issue and appointments will come back in June on June 14th. The Elections and Participation Committee, I will make a note of that. Put on the agenda. Okay. Is there anything more to discuss on this topic? Yes, James?
I would like to motion for a 15-minute recess.
A 5 to 10 minute.
10-minute recess.
There's literally nothing left on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Like there's some really procedural things that if it starts to get heavy out of nowhere, I'll call a
Alright.
recess.
10-minute recess then.
Yes, 10 minutes. Okay, council retreat and training.
I'll just cover this really quickly. There will be a council retreat scheduled for at some point towards the end of summer for us to all get together. There will also be council training. Consent and sensitivity training is mandatory for all councillors. That has to be done before by-elections. Otherwise, if you don't do this training, you forfeit your seat. So you cannot be on council. The executive will be scheduling council training over Robert's rules, the governance structures, and just some procedural stuff that you might not know, as well as the consent and sensitivity training. We will be sending out timing for retreat, and yeah.
David and then James.
So on this retreat, we're gonna learn everything.
On the retreat, we'll be doing certain work modules about certain things, but we'll also be doing team building exercises.
The training will be separate from the retreat.
Yeah.
James?
Here's a question. Didn't I just motion for recess and we didn't vote on the motion?
Oh, it's because there was everyone said no, so it was kind of like a.
There was a
It was a resounding.
Yeah.
What does
Okay, if you want to vote, that's fine.
But there's no.
Sorry? There was also no second. That's a good point.
Yeah. It was a motion.
Yes.
Yes.
Like I said, there's literally not a lot left to get through. Paige?
I have a question about the training, and I think, so did you say it was gonna be, during the summer?
So retreat will likely be in September, beginning of September, and training will be arranged for in the fall based on availabilities.
Cool.
But it just has to be done by a certain date.
Right.
Which is because otherwise you forfeit your seat.
Yes.
Thank you. Alex?
I would just want to ask for the consent sensitivity training, will there be multiple days in the chance that someone cannot make it?
Yes.
Rory?
Just to clarify, the rule about you have to have done the training, it's for the consent and sensitivity.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not for the Roberts rules or anything else.
Yeah.
Because some people may not need
Yeah,
to go
just
to
those.
those. Okay, thank you.
James?
Alright, yes, another question about the consent training. It's if you have already done, say, this year with another group consent training.
Doesn't matter.
Nope.
Right, thank you. Sammy?
Is the retreat itself mandatory?
No. It's highly
Why you don't like
encouraged,
us?
But
Yeah.
Thank you. Sophie?
How long is the retreat?
it's usually 2 days.
Okay, guys, seriously, we just need to get through 2 more points.
Yeah. It's usually 2 days, probably over a weekend. We give you as much notice as we can. It's really fun. We don't bite. Hang out with us, please.
Paige?
I just have concerns about it because for the ASFA retreat, there was no, no one knew anything. There was no information as
We
to,
will
like,
be giving
signatures and stuff.
information
Okay.
a lot ahead.
Cool.
Trust me.
Yeah.
I am a compulsive list maker.
Cool.
I will be providing you with so many lists. You'll be like, please, Sophie, stop.
Okay, I love lists, so great.
Rory?
Yeah, the Astro retreat is with like over 100 plus people, right? And this is literally just like council chilling, like let's get a chalet, let's do some bonding, get to know each other. I think it's like I understand some people may have like cultural or other reasons like why they can't say take a weekend off with friends, but I think it is very important for council to do this bonding early in the year. It's something that I don't think we did last year. And yeah, there were like, it's nice to get to know each other on a social level together so that when we're working together, these late nights and arguing about motions and things, it's just a little bit more personal and not so like adversarial across the room.
Right,
So it's encouraged.
Okay, so if there's nothing further on council retreat and training, we can move on to CSU email addresses and council communication.
The execs all have CSU emails now. So for professional matters, please send them to our CSU emails. We'll put
Can
them.
we just make sure, this is really important, so,
Yeah.
if
Sorry.
I'm
I've been
like
focused
trying to
on.
cut off
I'll
and you
move
can't
so
really
everyone
hear as
can
well.
see me.
Stand on the table.
So I will be posting in the Facebook all of our professional CSU emails. If you have any questions related to council, related to mandates, if you want to hang out, if you wonder where our office hours are, reach out to us at our CSU emails. For professional related questions, the executives would really appreciate it if you could forward it to the CSU emails rather than our personal Facebooks. There will be some stuff we do through the Facebook group because it's easier and everyone's there, but for the most part, please contact us at our CSU emails.
Gotta have that paper trail.
Just to clarify again, in terms of CSU emails, speaking of mine, I'm chair at csu.qc.ca, but also C. Robinson at csu.qc.ca. Chair is something that's institutional, so that means that the next chair and the next chair and the next chair are going to have this email address. So that means that if you need to send me something really personal, like I don't know if you have an emergency, a personal family situation, and you just want to say I can't make it to council or something like that, send it to the C. Robinson one because, and I mean, it's up to you, but the next chair next year will be able to go through all of this, and I don't know if they know you or anything like that, like just if you just don't feel comfortable with every future chair knowing everything, send it to my C. Robinson one. They both go to the same place in my Outlook, but next year's chair gets to see all of the other things. And I get to see all of the past chairs' things where other inappropriate things I can see. So keep that in mind when sending emails to either chair or council secretary, or even general coordinator, finance coordinator, all that. All of the future ones will see the emails you send. Thank you. Michelle.
Exec deletes it.
I just said
All right.
Hashtag this year.
Okay, so if there's nothing further about CSU email addresses and council communications, there are two execs who couldn't make it today and require an excusal. That would be John and Camille. Yes, Ron?
I move to excuse John and Camille.
Thank you. Margot, all those in favor, or first of all, is there any opposition to excusal? Okay.
Do we have to make it explicit the?
It's not with, no, because it's in the standing regs. The standing regs not withstand themselves.
Okay.
They say if council agrees. So, all good? Any opposition? Okay, so that carries. And we are on question period. So if
what's the question period?
question period is if there's anything, usually it's during the consent agenda, sometimes there'll be reports that are passed through. If it's something that you have a question about but you don't feel it necessary to pull the report and then have it approved, but you just want to say hey, I saw this in your report, could you maybe expand a little bit on it or something like that. Or if there's something that happened during the meeting that you just have an extra question about that needs to be addressed at council. Yes, Alex?
I apologize for the fact that I'm going to bring up what is best describes a dead horse, but for the electoral committee, the other one, not the one that we voted on, the other one, is that going to be just done in June? I just want to make sure that all of that stuff, if we bring it back, it's just going to be June, it's not today? Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not spending extra time now doing this as well, because that would take forever.
Well, it has happened.
Okay, so June it is. Chad?
Good question. So is council meeting in July and August?
No, as per the standing regs, council meets the second Wednesday of every month, with the exception of October, November, and January, where it's every second and fourth Wednesday, so that means there's 2 meetings, with the exception of July and August, where there are no meetings. So basically, June 14th is your next one, and then after that there's another exception. It's the 3rd Wednesday of September, because the second Wednesday is too early in the semester. So I will send out the list and where the meetings will be held, because I have to book rooms. So I'll send you the whole thing for the year. Michaela.
Yeah, so sorry if it's not super procedurally appropriate, but I'd like to just bring up CAF. Because it's been done in the past few years since it started, that the composition is 1 counselor, 1 exec, and then the rest of them. I feel like policy should not be meeting right now on this, since we haven't met yet, and this could be time consuming to change the standing regulations. Like I said before, I think it's really important that BIPOC members and other marginalized populations are part of this. And also, it's not a CSU standing committee, so it's not supposed to be kind of consumed by counselors. That's why we wanted to have, or it was created to have other people who are not part of the CSU. So I don't think it should be overwhelmed with counselors, and that's just how I'm feeling right now. And I feel like some other people in the room also agree with that. So I'm just wondering if we could just bring that up again. I don't know how we could do that.
You brought up a good point in Robert's rules. So if I make a decision, like defer something, and I do not at all take this personally, but challenge the chair, it's a thing. You can do it. It requires 2/3, so all you have to say is I challenge your decision. And then requires a second, we can reopen it. Not a big deal. Okay. Do we have a second? Rowan? Is there any opposition to challenging my deferral? Perfect. Yes. James?
Yes.
Okay. So all those in favor of challenging the chair, it doesn't get a debate.
4. Point of order here
Yes.
during the vote. Not to waste anyone's time, but the technicality for rising to appeal a decision of the chair is that the chair relinquishes their seat while the vote is taking place. So someone else would need to take the vote for you to reconsider your decision. Otherwise, it would be biased as you are presiding over the meeting while someone is disagreeing with you.
Thank you.
For
that. I motion to appoint myself interim chair for this vote.
No, you just need to do it.
Okay.
Count.
All right. Thanks, friend. All right.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
All those in favor. Let's just get through this. We're good. All those in favor of the chair appealing the chair's decision. 5, 6, 7. Okay. God. Okay. All those in favor of appealing the chair's decision. 1, 2, 3.
Question. Can this is a decision to bring it back up.
It brings it back up. So all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7? Am I counting right?
It's not differs the
Yes.
decision to policy.
It's to bring it back up. Okay, all those against? Abstentions? 1.
What was the count?
It was 7 yes, 4 no, 2 abstentions.
It's a 2/3 with 7 out of 11.
11 of 10 is 6, right?
So
7 out of 11 is...
Okay, so it passes.
Yeah.
Motion carries.
63%.
All right, go back to being the chair.
Wait.
The engineers are going to double count here.
Sorry.
Just wait.
Wait, what?
It's not 2/3.
It's not 2/3?
It's not 2/3.
Okay. Thank you for the calculators in the room.
Although, do the abstentions, do the 2 abstentions?
No, they never do. I'm just confirming for you.
Something percentage-wise, it may not be 2/3, but it is 2/3 of the people in this room.
At all.
Can we just give me 2 seconds? Because people don't do this to me often. And I really do appreciate it. Like, if ever you don't feel that it is okay, do please. Oh, no, sorry. Okay, I'm wrong. Like I said,
So
doesn't happen
majority
very
vote?
often. It's a majority vote. Sorry.
So the motion carries.
Robert's rules. Yes.
That's how.
See, that's why I need the training.
See?
Yeah, same.
Clearly me too. Rowan?
So we're on the
Yeah.
point of cap. Okay, I want to agree.
So we will be appointing one person.
What?
It's that it doesn't get deferred to committee. We're still on appointments of CAF. It's up to council what you want to do. Yes, Rowan?
Okay, so we had this discussion last year because someone motioned to put 2 counselors on it again, and I just want to go over. I was on council when we made this committee. The entire purpose of it is essentially there's a lot of funding committees within the CSU. There's sustainability, which puts money towards sustainability. There's campaigns, which puts it towards campaigns. There's student life, which has the special project funding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on. And all these committees are controlled mostly by counselors. And so the idea behind this committee was to create one committee that has access to the CSU funds that is not like made up majority of counselors and executives, and really diffuse the money so that other students can have a say and other community groups can have a say in it. So I think because of that and because of the entire purpose behind this committee, it's extremely important that we keep the member at large. And with that we only have 1 counselor on the seat, or 1 counselor on the committee, as well as 1 executive, 1 student at large, and then the community groups.
Thank you. James, Alex, and then David.
Alright, so I would like to motion to defer this to policy committee and come up with a decision by next year.
It was just
No,
like
it
that.
was just it was just
Yeah,
like
like
that.
council just motioned to not do that.
Now you have to do 2/3 to go.
Yes, yeah. Because then you'd have to.
No, your decision was appealed. I can still make a motion. Is that correct?
No, it would, yeah, because
They're unilateral positions, but.
the decision to defer it to committee was undone. If council wants to reopen it, that is true, they would require a 2/3 motion to defer it to committee because you'd be reconsidering something that happened 5 minutes ago, and somebody on the presiding side would have to change their mind.
I would just like to say that this is, like I said, for marginalized populations, so I don't know why this is.
We are challenging.
This seems kind of a little bit inappropriate,
and
to be honest.
policy is made up of who? Sorry.
Right, thank you. Alex?
I would like to personally disagree with Rowan, specifically because we have 4 members at large appointed from other non-CSU groups, meaning we already have 4 members at large who are not counselors. As such, I do not find that making 2 counselors will actually change the majority, so I don't personally find that to be the biggest.
It's 1. It's not.
No, I'm saying if I were, wait, it's, no, there's,
Let's have a clarification of how many seats there are.
Can I read it? I
Yes,
have it open.
you may
read it.
Okay,
Write it down.
so here it says, chapter 2 of like standing regs, it says, 4 CSU members independently appointed by incorporated non-CSU organizations that collect fees from CSU membership and are accountable to CSU membership. And then B, which is what we're like talking about right now, or should be, is 3 representatives appointed by the CSU.
And counselor, student at large.
Yes, exactly. That's what the precedent has been.
what I was trying to argue is specifically in A, we have those 4 essentially members at large who are appointed by
External community
they're external
members.
committees. I believe QPIRG is one, the Gender Advocacy Center, but they are essentially non-council members. As such, I do not find that we have such a pressing need for a member at large, given we have 4 external groups to the council who already have a majority, and thus can overrule the council.
Alright, thank you, okay. We're gonna go with the speakers list. It's David, Sophie, Princess, Margot, Rowan, Michelle, and James. I understand that everyone wants to speak to the issue, but we need to go with the list because it's just gonna get out of hand. David?
I call the question.
There's no motion on the table.
Then.
Do
you have a question?
Do you have?
We're just open discussion, that's all we're doing?
Yes, currently the point is CAF appointments. There is no motion,
Okay.
nothing like that on the table.
I motion to keep it as the precedent.
Okay, do we have a second? Margot? Alright, so that opens a new speakers list, the precedent being 1 exec, 1 counselor,
1 student at large.
1 student at large. Okay, so that's the motion on the table.
Sorry.
Discussion is open. Princess?
Part of the reason why it matters if we have a student at large, although you already have 4 at large that have 4 at large members, is because that leaves more room for diversity, and also if you're not involved with any of those, right, this is your opportunity to be able to still be involved. And just as well, we also need to recognize the fact that like the whole point of CAF is like to fund like projects that that target like marginalized groups. And can we like please just look around the room? Thank you. That's it. That's literally it.
I just want to clarify something. Diversity in like a life way, not like a faculty way.
Okay. Thank you. Paige? Oh, you're.
I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, Michelle?
I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to why there's such an issue with giving one seat to a student, because right now we have about 30 people that represent 40,000 students, and we're saying, oh, there's like 5 or 6 people that are very interested in this seat, so let's give it back. Well, there are like 40,000 students. You don't think that there are going to be a few people interested in this seat? And I don't see why the 30 people here who are already on a ton of committees would have the right to take that from a bunch of other students that weren't elected but have the right to be involved.
Thank you. Sophie?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate a lot of the same sentiment that I've heard around the room. Basically, look, we are, as much as we were democratically elected, we're also in a privileged position. The whole point of having a student at large be one of these seats is so that it's not just people who look like me dominating conversations all the time. And I think that because this room does, I'm really happy with the diversity I do see in this room, especially when it comes to faculties, because that's mandated in the standing regulations. But I would just like to stress that having a student at large who is outside of the already engaged people is so important to promote future engagement as well. Part of sustainability of practices and committees in future is making sure that people are getting engaged even when they're not already engaged. So it's great that we're also passionate about things, but let's leave room for students who aren't already engaging in these institutions to have that same passion in the future.
Thank you. Sophie?
I think the fact that it's for marginalized groups of people, they are able to, like the students that get involved in that are able to make decisions for themselves and self-govern, and we should just be wary of, like Sophie said, like a privileged position, and just, do we really need that seat? I don't think so, especially given like the people who really want to have a second seat are already on many committees.
Thank you. Rowan?
I call the question.
Okay, do we have a second? Is there any opposition to calling the question? All right, so the question's been called. The motion on the table is to keep the status quo at 1 exec, 1 counselor, 1 member at large, student at large, correct? Yes. Okay, so all those in favor, please raise your placards. 8, all those opposed, 9, sorry. 1, 2, and any abstentions? 1. All right, so the composition has been clarified at 1 student at large, 1 exec, and 1 counselor. Okay, so back on the main speakers list, Sophie.
I rescind.
Okay, Princess?
I would like to motion for us to vote on who's going to be the council member.
Oh yeah,
on
you
this.
don't need a motion.
Oh, okay, yeah, could we just, get to that?
Okay.
Yeah.
There's still speakers list, but if anyone wants to nominate themselves or someone else, feel free. Margot?
Question.
You're on the speakers list. Is it pressing in the next? Okay, Margot? Rowan?
Percent.
Michelle, sorry. James?
Yes, so at the end of the day, I'd like to renominate myself for this meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
No.
And also,
Princess?
I'd like to nominate Paige, and I'd also like to just make a suggestion once again that the whole point of CAF is to direct funding to marginalized groups, which also means that you should probably fall under that category.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I just need a second. Sorry, I thought you were seconding.
I was not seconding.
Jad? Okay, so Princess, you have nominated Margot.
No, I nominated Paige.
Oh, you nominated Paige, sorry.
Yeah.
Paige, do we have a second? Or sorry, do you consent?
Yes,
Sorry.
I consent and I second.
Okay, moving along.
I
Seven.
nominate John.
Okay, do you consent?
Yeah.
Okay, moving along. Anyone else?
Say no.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, so I have James, Paige, and Jad. Okay, so if there's nothing further, I'll give you a second to motivate for yourselves. James.
all right, yes. So I'd like to be once again involved in the Concordia community. I believe that it's a good place, especially for somebody to bring kind of a different position than a lot of other people would in this position, especially since it's as a member from an engineering faculty, which is something that we generally don't tend to do. I believe that the perspective should be good,
Alright,
especially
okay, colleagues
Okay.
talking.
especially considering the fact that we're going to have students at large to voice different perspectives. I believe that this perspective will be very good. It'll bring kind of a different way of thinking to managing Concordia's funds and whatnot. So I believe that that's very, so please vote for me. Game's up.
Paige?
I am a member of a lot of different intersections of diversity, and I think that my perspective comes from all of those different things, and I think that I would be the best person to represent and advocate for marginalized folks, and yeah.
Thank you. Jad?
The reason why I want to be part of this committee is because besides CSU, I also work with a few nonprofits here in Montreal. One of them is it's actually the first nonprofit that ever fought for LGBT rights in the Middle East. And so I know what it's like to really struggle to get funding. So when I see a committee like that, and it's like the whole purpose of it is giving money to people like me in a nonprofit that's trying to look for money, it's like it kind of makes sense that I would want to be there, because I want to give those nonprofits the same opportunity I would want my nonprofit to be given. So.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point the speakers list is open. David and Michaela both raised their placards.
Well, it wasn't initially what I wanted to say, but after hearing Jad speak, I want to what's the word?
Motivate.
Motivate for him on his behalf. I mean, I didn't even know that about him, and having heard that, and given the whole idea of the fund, I mean, he's just a perfect candidate. That's all.
Thank you. Michaela?
Okay, so two things. One thing is that CAF has absolutely nothing to do with faculty, so I'd just like to clarify that in terms of diversity. Also, I would like to nominate Paige. Like like they stated, basically, Paige is part of many different intersections of diversity, and I think they've also been part of a lot of social justice initiatives and a lot of activity on campus in terms of the Career Community, which is a career magazine as well. And I think they would do an excellent job.
Thank you. Princess?
I'd like to strongly motivate for Paige and for Jad. Jad and I don't agree on a lot, but I'm such a huge fan of the nonprofit that he works for. And this is a space that is for that, because not every space is for everyone, because there are a couple of people who are fortunate to have spaces where everywhere is theirs. So CAF is for that, and so that's why I'm motivating very strongly for the two of you.
Thank you. James?
Yes, I would like to, after hearing Jad's little motivation here, I would like to once again motivate for Jad and rescind my own nomination as to not try people, confuse people whether or not to vote for if they're wondering whether to vote for one or the other. I would like to motivate for Jad, because I believe he'd be a good fit, especially considering all the stuff he's worked for.
Thank you. Sophie and then Alex?
I would just like to motivate for both Paige and Jad again. I think both of them have done some incredible work, and both of them deserve an opportunity to sit on this funding board. I'd also like to motivate for Jad specifically. I feel like Jad has brought up some amazing points throughout this meeting about having accountability and diversity of opinions, and I think that that's very important, because we might be friends with different people or involved in different groups, but that doesn't mean we can't all come together for a good cause. So
thank you. Alex and then David?
I would also like to motivate for Jad as well. I feel that Jad is I feel like Jad's a very qualified candidate for this. Yeah, there we go. Very involved. Sorry, it's very late. Very involved in the local communities, doing important work to help social justice. I feel that Jad would perhaps be a very good fit for TAB, and I strongly nominate for him.
Thank you. David?
Given the, I guess, what is it, the motivation for both candidates, I mean, I'd like to call forth the question.
Okay, there's no one else on the speakers list, so if everyone's amenable to it, we can move to a vote. So your prospective nominees are Paige and Jad, and thank you. Hand out the papers. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, they turned into micro. Oh, that's fine. It's only
Micro
one.
ballots, that's it.
Yeah, it's only one name, so shouldn't be too. Sorry. Too difficult to fit everything.
That's a
Thank
lot
you.
for me. I'm literally gonna get like 2.
Thank you, boss.
Every time I'm like, come on. We won't tell anyone. Can I go if I yes, thank you.
No, you cannot.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I go home early.
Oh wait, look. So hold on. I only have so many hands.
That's fine.
Roll more.
One day.
Maybe the scary part.
I have no.
You have to be nice.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Okay, I have a question.
Bruh, be nice.
No one has to be nice ever. It's all a decision that we made.
It's for the best to be nice.
Not always.
I'm.
Cook? Okay. Carnivore. I got to see what carnivore are you going to take this picture? Oh, wait, which one?
Because we had to do this and that was it. Because we got
The ribs look burned. Portions look burned. That time, so I was like, I have to take it back.
That's why, like, at 7. Like, I can't do this.
All right, so at this point, I'd like to congratulate Chad on your appointment to the CAF committee, or the CAF. Is there any more discussion? We have to nominate an exec, I guess?
I think it's.
Can do that.
Oh, they can do that, okay, you can appoint amongst themselves. Okay, James?
Yes, first question, after we're done this, is there anything left on the agenda? All right, good. So I'd like to speak on a certain issue. It is concerning our glorious sustenance we're provided during the meetings. Now, I believe that the market has spoken, and the fact that the only material that is ever left over is the ones that are non-meat products. I believe that shows a sort of willingness. This happened last time, this happened this time, and I believe that this means that the market has spoken, and we should probably, for the next meeting, shift the balance more towards the carnivorous side, especially since there's so much non-meat left over and there's always people looking for more meat options. So that's just something I believe we should do.
Thank you. Akira, Sophie H, and then Sophie B.
So, as standing regulations, the CSU has to provide 2/3 vegan meals. We are a sustainable union, and sustainability means getting products that are sustainable. Unfortunately, at the current moment with the world, eating meat, buying meat products is not a sustainable way of living. So we actually have to buy 2/3 vegan food, even if 75% of this room eats meat and would prefer to eat meat. So,
Thank you. Sophie?
Yeah, just to reiterate, it is in the standing regulations, and it's, them's the breaks.
Thank you. Sophie?
I was just gonna say that it's not the left, like everything was vegan today, it's not what's left over.
Thank you. James?
Yes, so I believe then that, I guess, the chair mentioned earlier that we can just notwithstand these regulations. I believe we should do that because, first of all, this is something we can food. This is something really great. And I motion to get more meat because, if nobody's eating the food, we are wasting it. Or if nobody wants to eat the food.
I'm gonna stop you there because, this brings up a great point. When we formulate our motions that arise from the floor are allowed, but please formulate them correctly because a motion that says, I move to bring more meat is not a good motion for council. So, before you say motions, I need you to formulate them into, and this goes for everyone, because it's kind of been happening a little bit, please formulate them into something proper sentence-y.
All right, I move to repeal the motion saying 2/3 vegan because it's done.
So you can't.
sorry, did
repeal
you
it
just
anyway.
call 2/3 vegan dumb?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, that's not appropriate, and during Robert's Rules training, you will learn that when we speak in our adult voice, we do not use such terms as things are dumb, because they weaken our arguments.
All right.
So I don't need your motivation, just say the motion.
All right. So first question, Motion to repeal the clause saying 2/3 vegan.
Okay.
If that's
It would
an appropriate
require a 2/3 majority and a second to change a standing regulation. Is there a second? Okay, so the motion does not get a second, the motion fails, and we're back on the speakers list, which is Michaela, Paige, and then Princess.
So I think instead of arguing against this in a very aggressive manner, I would suggest that we discuss what food people do like, because there are many vegan options and many vegetarian options that we can be considering. We can have a conversation about this. This doesn't have to be super oppositional. We would gladly love to have suggestions, and we can provide food that people like more, and that's not a problem. We're very open to that, and we'll put maybe a poll up very soon about this so that we can have different options for people with different tastes.
Okay, Paige?
No, I rescind.
Princess?
I would just like to point something out. Like I don't know about the whole market has spoken thing, but I'm a meat eater and I am more than happy with the food that is supplied. Because let's also just keep something in mind. Not only are we talking about sustainability, but we're also talking about the fact that food is being provided for free, A, and B, there are people who literally we see every day outside on the street who have none to eat and beg all the time. So let's keep in mind that fact and be very, very respectful when we talk about things like that. And like Michaela had said earlier, we're more than happy to figure things out in that regard. We did also ask for food options when the first council-elect was about to start. If meat is that big of a deal, maybe we can acquiesce to figuring something out, but 2/3 of the food is supposed to be vegan and it's not going to change, as we obviously just saw a second ago. So that's it.
Thank you. Akira?
I rescind.
Samantha?
I would, as a meat eater, I believe that it's important for council to come together and recognize that while you cannot revoke someone's right to eat meat and enjoy it, at the same time it is important to reduce consumption overall if we want to contribute towards a smaller ecological footprint. That being said, we still retain the right to bring our own food here.
Yeah,
We
bring
don't
our own meat.
necessarily have to eat what's provided. So if we feel that we are still hungry and want to save some food for other people or aren't fully satisfied with what's provided, there's always the option to bring something that could be a meat product that would satisfy us throughout the meeting.
Thank you. Margot? Sorry, Sophie.
Well, in my opinion, if for some people meat is so important, I don't mind just agreeing to only eat the vegan option. If some people as a dietary something want to reserve the meat option or whatever, I don't care personally. It's such a big deal.
Thank you. Margot?
Is there anything else that we're doing after this? And motion to adjourn?
Let me just make sure. There are announcements, and sometimes councilors do have them, but if you'd like to call for the orders of the day, which is the equivalent of calling the question when there's no motion on the table, you be my guest. Thank you, and I will accept them. Announcements. Rowan.
Yeah, so I talked to some guy on the mezzanine who I don't remember his name, but yeah, we talked about he's getting a petition together for the city of Montreal regarding the something on systemic racism. Consultation, thank you. So he handed me a couple forms. If anyone wants to fill them out, I've got them right here, and come up to me after council. It's
Jeff?
It's actually like a procedural thing. So when they called the order of the day, does someone else second?
No, it's I just say you go right on ahead.
Okay.
Yes, Rowan. Sorry.
Sorry, to clarify, Quebec was supposed to have a systemic inquiry into systemic racism within the province, and the last minute decided they didn't need to. People were understandably upset, so there's a group filing a formal petition to the city for which they need 15,000 signatures by mid-July. So if you live within the city of Montreal, you can sign it, and it's a way to get it put back onto the table. It's kind of like a direct democratic thing that's written into whatever laws. So I've got copies of the petition if councillors want to call on Quebec to do the inquiry, which it obviously should.
Thank you. Michelle?
Can I just also ask, in terms of announcements, can this be just sort of general procedural?
I mean, if you can just say point of privilege
Yeah.
or anything
Yeah.
if you have a question.
It's not a question, it's just I really want to try to remind everybody, like myself included, learning Robert's rules is difficult, and however, and so I understand there's a learning curve, but there's been like a lot of disrespectful behavior in the past 2 meetings, in the sense that, like, I understand Robert's rules is difficult, but I think we all know that we shouldn't be like having conversations on the side while other people are talking, and just general points of respect is like not using rude language and rude body language. Respect is super important if we want to have a working relationship for an entire year, so I really want people to try to keep that in mind.
Thank you. And just on a side note, I'll definitely make sure to try to call it out a little bit. I don't always hear when things happen. If like I'm listening to someone and other people are talking, I won't always hear it, but call it out. Say point of personal privilege, I can't hear, there's people talking. And just let you know, when you're talking over your colleagues, what that's telling everyone is you think you're more important. You think you're the most important person in the room because you're not showing them the respect. And respect is very important on this type of board. Like I said, you're not playing with Monopoly money, you're playing with students' money. So when you show up here professional, you speak professional, you don't speak over your colleagues, or else I will call you out and there can be additional consequences, such as censure and a few other things, which is basically council telling you that you've done bad and you have a reprimand. But anyways, it's never gotten to that. Please just be respectful. Yes, Paige?
I just want to say that I have hearing issues. I'm essentially half deaf, so if there's people talking or there's like a lot of white noise, no offense to people who are having conversations or whatever, but like, yeah, if there's a lot of white noise, I can't hear. And so like I really want to drive that point home of like, don't talk over when something is happening, and like, yeah. So there.
Alright, thank you very much. Okay, so if there's nothing further, Margot?
I'd like to move to adjourn.
Alright, thank you. Do we have a second? Perfect. Any opposition? Excellent. Good meeting, everyone. Woo.